Hey everybody, welcome to the Hang Up here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. I've gone old school and I wore this shirt, which, yes, it's still in my closet. It's been around for ages. I remember somebody watched an episode of The Atheist Experience maybe 16, 17 years ago, and I was wearing this shirt, so I've had it for a long time. And they wrote a review of the show where they described me as wearing a demonic shirt with flames and infinity symbols because they did not recognize a craps table layout and the fact that that's an 8. And then they said that I had the personality of Bill O'Reilly on PCP. And so, cool. Welcome to the new style of the old style. So, welcome to 2025. Happy New Year to anybody who cares and wants to celebrate. Or to me, it's mostly just another day. I don't tend to make resolutions. As I mentioned during last night's New Year's Eve hangout here on the line, I want to either fix things as they happen or ignore them until I can't ignore them anymore. And that hurts more to say because it's absolutely real. But I am for 2025 kind of expecting the worst, but hoping for slightly less than the worst. I don't think I have any good reason to hope for the best but the best possible would be slightly less than the worst. On the shows, though, I still want to engage with callers, and we're working towards more debate shows and other things like that. But I want people to call in and present their reason for believing things, in particular gods and supernatural claims. This is not the show for people to call in and try to use it as a soapbox for their issue. Before the show even started, we had someone call in and they wrote an email to their university and they wanted us to let them read it on the show. And this has nothing to do with the show. It's not what the show's about. So I went ahead and took their call before we got started. And before I could finish half of my very first sentence, which was essentially saying, hey, that's not the way this is going to work, they immediately interrupted. And when I put them on hold to say, look, you can send us the email, I'll look it over. And if I think it's relevant to the show, I'll give you an opportunity to call in and read it. But that also wasn't good enough. When I took them off hold again, they started to complain that I hadn't let them speak and I hadn't read their email. And so finally, we just let that go. So before the show even started, I'm already irritated because somebody wants to be a co-host or wants to use our platform as their personal soapbox. That's not what this is for, but it can be. And I tried to give somebody an opportunity for how they could possibly get to use this platform to tell you guys about something important, if it was in fact important. But that wasn't good enough. We have had a weird mix of liars, trolls, voice box, everything else. And while we still get theistic callers, and we occasionally get great theistic callers, we don't get as many great theistic callers as we would like. Today, on today's show, as a test bed, possibly for future episodes of the Hang Up and maybe even the Sunday show or whatever else, I'm going to implement some new rules about calls that hopefully make it more accessible to people, because some of you know you are not ready to debate or take any questions or remotely even engage in a back and forth about your beliefs. And so there's no reason for you to call in. You'd rather sit back and hope that somebody else who shares your views is able to call in and do the thing that you're not ready to do. And I understand that. I appreciate it. And it's probably wise. So starting tonight, we'll see how this goes. You don't actually have to defend anything or engage in a back and forth. What we want to know is, what do you believe? What belief are you advocating for? And that belief should be somewhat specific but brief. I believe in the Christian God. I believe in the Muslim God. I believe in some version of the Christian or Muslim God. I believe in Scientology. I believe in ghosts, goblins, demons. I believe aliens are controlling the government. I believe in a personal God that's not tied to any specified religion. I believe in a higher power that is conscious, a conscious agent that created everything. Then once you get through what it is that you're trying to, or what you believe, then we'd like to know why you believe. It would be nice if it was about why other people should believe as well. Because let's be honest, if you believe in God because God privately revealed himself to you, even if you have a good reason to believe, that doesn't mean anybody else should believe based on your good reason. To paraphrase David Hume, revelation is necessarily first person, and to everybody else, it's hearsay. But you could say, I believe because of, and then present your argument and evidence quickly. I believe because of the impossibility of the contrary, or because the Bible says so, or because trees can't make themselves, or whatever you want. There may be during this time clarifying questions that are only about, I'm not unsure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying this type of thing? And that's only if you're not being specific enough. You don't have to debate or be under scrutiny beyond the, trying to clearly understand what you're saying. And if at any point you are done taking questions, including near the beginning, you can just say, no more questions, and we will then address whatever you've given us to the best of our ability. In fact, you could call in and say, I believe in the Christian God based on the inner witness of the Holy Spirit, and I won't be taking any questions on that. We'll say, okay, thank you. And you can go on about your merry business. And then you can listen to us respond to you based on just what you said. For those who want to engage, same as always. We are eager to do that. But I think there are people, I suspect, I don't know, who would love to be able to say, I believe because Jesus cured my alcoholism, and I don't want to defend that under any scrutiny at all. And it would still give us an opportunity to address what someone believes and why they believe it, even if they don't want to engage in a back and forth. That way we're actually, I'm not saying, well, it'd be a really bad show if we brought Promise in and we just kind of played roles. Like, hey, Promise, what would you say to somebody if they said, oh, I believe because, Jesus cured my alcoholism? And then we'd have questions. So that is the new, for tonight, attempt at kinder, gentler rules so that the people who don't want to debate might still get to be honestly represented and have their issue addressed. And the nice thing is, if you call in and you say, I believe in, the Jewish God, because that's what I was taught as a kid, and I'm not taking any more questions on it, then Promise and I can say, okay, thank you. Here's what we as skeptics and critical thinkers have questions that we would have asked if you just stuck around. Here are the thoughts we have on what you've actually said. And then you calmly and offline can take notes on the questions we asked, think about them, come up with answers. And then the next time you call in, you can be like, I previously called and said this, and you guys had these questions, and I've got answers to them. And maybe if we give everybody more time and more space, but don't occupy time and space on the show for an hour going in circles with someone who does not want to do that, the conversations would just get better and better. But maybe I'm wrong. There's just a suspicion about how I'd like to potentially do stuff. But for those of you who want to call in, in the normative sense and say, hey, the Hindu gods are communicating with me directly, and you feel like actually defending that, you can do that. And so joining me for this excursion tonight, I'm so excited. What a wonderful way for me to start off 2025. Please welcome from Chewed Gum and everything else, my friend Promise. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing well. I'm excited to try out this new form. If anybody wants to take us up on the offer, I think that is a very kind way to let people learn how to start engaging and thinking critically about what it is they believe, even if they're maybe intimidated by the idea of a back and forth, more debate style conversation. So it'll be fun.
Plus, I hear that
how are you?
neither one of us got good sleep last night. So
Correct.
we're a bit sluggish, maybe.
We'll get through it. It'll be great.
We have callers, theist callers, already queued up, and I mentioned this one already, so I think it would be fair to do this one first. If you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
As a reminder, the people calling in, there are audio delays. There are delays between each of us. There are delays with the show. We will probably still use mute to try to keep from talking over each other. We're primarily going to focus on asking questions that are clarifying until we get to a point where we need to have a back and forth. And you can stop the questions at any time by saying, I'm not taking any further questions, and we'll let you go. The other thing to remember is that this is one of many shows here on the line. I will update later on with the schedule, but we are also supported by the people who are watching this show, the people who subscribe to the network, the people who support us on Patreon, the people who donate super chats. We will be reading all super chats over $10 in the later half of tonight's show. I got a mild hiccup thing all of a sudden. Professional speaker, but can't avoid hiccups. Jeez, I should have prayed before the show started because that would fix it. But just keep those things in mind. We want to have good conversations, if at all possible. And thank you for your patience. We're going to start off with Sura calling from India. Sura says that the Hindu gods are communicating with him, pronouns are him. Sura, tell us a little bit about what you mean when you say the Hindu gods are communicating with you, because I don't know what that means.
They are coming in my dreams and in my YouTube channel also. Actually, I watch different shows like comedy and music, but I don't know, somehow the entire homepage gets deleted and only the God thing shows up. I actually changed the settings also. I changed even the email also.
Sir, I apologize.
I don't know how
I apologize. The audio quality is a little low, and I'm having difficulty understanding what you're saying. You think the Hindu gods are communicating with you in your dreams?
Yes.
How do you know?
Repeatedly.
Go ahead, promise.
Yeah, did you say music as well? And movies?
No. In dreams, they come repeatedly. Actually, if I thought it is just some kind of normal dream that everybody will have some that general dream. But when that Hindu gods communicate with me repeatedly, so I assume that it is they want to communicate with me and want to tell me a message or something. It is happening repeatedly. Actually. I don't know how. I even went to a psychiatrist.
I apologize. I'm unable to understand more than half of what you're saying.
Yeah, I went to doctor, psychiatrist also. I explained to him that why these repeated dreams are coming. Repeatedly, why Hindu gods are only coming in my dreams. I should have any, I'm unable to have any different dreams. Why can't I have different dreams? Doctor said, I don't know.
Okay, sir.
They also looking strange to me.
So you're having dreams, you don't know why, and your doctor doesn't know why. How do you know that the dreams are actual Hindu gods rather than your brain just interpreting your dreams as Hindu gods?
See, dreams means it will only come, generally any dream will come, right? Today I ate something in hotel. Even that could also come as a dream.
Okay.
I rode
a
bike
sir, we have to stop.
Forest.
I'm sorry, sir. We have to stop. It's not your fault. Your English is better than my any other language, but the combination of audio quality from the device you're using to call from and the accent and the audio dipping is making it so that I genuinely cannot understand a significant portion of what you're saying. And so I don't think that we can be of any use on this call.
Okay, you are not able to clear half of my words.
Yeah,
I heard
it's muffled
you're
and
not
quiet.
able to hear words. So no, unfortunately, we're not able to understand you sufficiently to have a conversation. I would just say that you should probably get comfortable with saying, I don't know, instead of saying the gods are communicating with me. You should be saying, I don't know what these dreams are. And there's no reason to put any significance on dreams and no reason to think the dreams are coming from any source other than your mind.
No, repeated dreams. I am saying repeatedly. Why should they come? Often, 90% of my dreams are only Hindu gods. So, what conclusion should I give to it?
Nothing. You cannot reach a conclusion about your dreams. That's how your brain works when it's in its sleep state.
No, why can't?
It doesn't
Why?
have to make
No, why
it
can't I?
doesn't have to make sense. It's not a message from anywhere else. And if you think that it is, you need to come up with proof to demonstrate that that's the case.
No, why can't I have a dream like I ate something in a hotel, or I went to a zoo park, or I went to some shopping mall? Why can't I
Sir, all I
have those
heard,
kind of dreams?
all I heard was, why can't I dream? And then a whole bunch of things that I could not understand. I apologize, but we're going to end the call here. We cannot understand you. It's not necessarily your fault. It's just that there's too much that's going to be lost in any attempt to discuss this for this conversation to be useful to anybody. So thank you for calling, but we're going to have to let you go. That's unfortunate. I don't know how.
That was really difficult to understand. Although I think I caught the gist, which is that he thinks because it's repeated dreams about the same topic that it means something is real. But I have repeated dreams about the weirdest stuff ever, and it means nothing other than I'm probably needing to sleep better.
I'm in a curious spot where I almost never remember my dreams. Most nights I go to sleep, and whenever I wake up, it's like that period of time didn't happen and didn't exist for most of my life. There are exceptions, and I'm pretty confident that even those nights where I don't remember anything, I'm pretty sure I still dreamed, because occasionally I will wake up in mid-dream, and if you asked me right then what I was dreaming about, I could start to tell you, but the entire thing dissipates faster than I can even describe it. And so it is very rare that I have a dream that is clear enough or vivid enough to even tell someone about. And let's imagine for a second that there was some being, a god, an alien, a spirit, whatever. Why would they attempt to communicate with you while your conscious mind is indisposed? Is it because that's the only time they can communicate with you? Let's assume that. Let's assume that they cannot communicate with you when you're conscious, and they can only do it when you're essentially sleeping, when your brain is not functioning at its cognitive peak or anywhere near it. If that's the case, how would we demonstrate that we're actually getting communications from anyone? What should we or would we need to understand from those communications? I would say, as someone who's not an expert, that if you are repeatedly having dreams about the same thing, what it probably means is that your brain is struggling with some issue or some problem, and it is constantly in your peripheral thought. Like if you've been worried about a sick relative and you keep having dreams about that relative getting better or getting worse or whatever else, that makes sense. We could all imagine something like that. But there may be things that you're worried about that you're not aware you're worried about. And your brain, in the process of sorting through thoughts and everything, while you're sleeping, is focused on those things. Or maybe, your brain has no way to sort those. Or maybe it doesn't mean anything. In much the same way that for people who are old, used to be you would tune your television into a particular channel. and you had a little dial. And if you missed it, you would get static on the screen. And occasionally you might get an image from some channel somewhere. You might see a brief flash of somebody's face. Or, you know what? Back when satellite TV first came out, we would try to tune in the porn channels and, and be like, oh, I think I saw a boobie in the static. And you may have, but it wasn't necessarily a message from someone with intent. You may have just gotten bits and pieces of stuff from elsewhere. Until you come up with a way to show that your dreams are a message and there is significance, the better thing to do is say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I keep having this dream or this thought. It would be a mistake to assume that there's more to it than you can demonstrate. So
yeah, I mean, I know for me, I remember all of my dreams vividly. And if something is stressing me out, if there's a particular theme, I will dream about it over and over and over again. Or if something is a theme in my life at the moment, I assume that's just my brain's way of processing stuff while I'm sleeping. So for somebody to say, I had a dream about Hindu gods. Well, if you're already inclined to believe in those Hindu gods, then that first dream is already going to set a precedent for you to be thinking about it, which I would think sets you up to continue dreaming about something. So I don't find that to be interesting at all, because then does that mean some of the things I have repeated dreams about over and over again are actually God? I have like this repeated nightmare with this monster thing. Is that God? How would you determine just because of repetition? I just don't see that as a good reason at all.
Yep. By the way, Bach, since you think I like taking calls from dummies, you should definitely call in because you qualify.
Oh, is somebody talking shit in the chat?
Yeah. Somebody said I like taking calls from dummies so I can get on my soapbox and that I should be more like Eve. Now, I would agree with them that in many ways I would like to be more like Eve, but I'm also happy being myself, and it depends on what day and what's going on. But if somebody's in chat, if you think that I'm only taking calls from dummies, if you're a dummy, you can call in and prove yourself right. And if you're not a dummy, you could call in and prove yourself right. So bring it on, baby.
Also, we take the same calls. You and I sit here, we use the same exact website. We sit and we take calls the exact same way. So that's also ridiculous. I take the same calls.
Yep. So here we got Alfred's calling from Texas. Pronouns are he, him. Wants to talk about Jesus as a role model. How you doing, Alfred?
Hi, Matt. I don't know if you remember me.
And promise? And promise?
I am here too.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, I remember you. You called the other day about anti-Jewish sentiment in the New Testament, and I didn't care. So what do you got for us today?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'll keep it short. I just wanted to say that I'm a Christian because Jesus is a great role model. From what we hear about him in the earliest layers of the Q document, he constantly taught about forgiveness, not judging people, loving your enemy, healing people, and eating with sinners, radical love of the neighbor. He also wasn't afraid to question the Old Testament to challenge it. There's, I think, 7 sayings in Matthew 5 where he says, I know you've heard it said, yada, yada, but I say yada, yada. And it's that portion of the Gospels that kind of makes the Old Testament a lower canon for many of us Christians. There are other places where he's talking with someone. Someone asks him, good teacher, what is the greatest law? And he doesn't say, no. All of the Bible is equal in status. He says, I'll tell you. The greatest is Hear, O Israel. He recites the Shema, and then he says, love the Lord your God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and spirit. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. And essentially that was for Jesus
Alfred,
core. Sure.
I'm sorry. I know I'm interrupting, but this might save all of us some time because I was a Christian for years and years and years, and so was Matt, and we both know the New Testament really well, and we know a lot of these things that you're saying, and we understand your perspective on that. But is the fact that Jesus was a good role model really your reason for believing? Because I know a lot of people that I think were even better role models than Jesus, but I don't believe that they're God, and I wouldn't
Really?
follow a religion based off of them. Yeah.
Who would you say is a better role model than Jesus?
Me.
Yeah, and pretty much most of the friends I
Jesus
have in
didn't
my life.
demean people. He wasn't misogynistic. You really
So first
shouldn't
of
put
all, I'm
yourself
not.
on that kind of pedestal.
Are you saying I'm
That wasn't the answer
misogynistic?
to my, and that wasn't the answer to my question either, which is kind of
I'm not
frustrating.
saying you are now. I know you've said misogynistic things and you've never said, okay, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize.
Okay,
You're the guy
what
who
did I
called and didn't
say?
even say
What did I
hello to
say?
me.
What did I say?
Do you really want me to get into it? I didn't come here to attack you, sir.
I'm sorry, but you did fucking attack me. So now you're going to defend it, or you're going to go the fuck away.
Sure. So, in what context is it moral, I know you're humanist, to use the B word as a pejorative? Answer.
I've already corrected for that and said that I would not do that in the future, if at all possible. However,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
yeah, you don't know everything about me, but it's not
That's true.
misogynistic to use the bitch word as a colloquialism, because I'm not going after women or using it. The bitch word is a female dog thing, and it demeans women in the
interpreted
sense
that
of,
way.
would you stop fucking interrupting me, you little shit?
Happily re-educated. I'm sorry. Sorry. Sir?
Never mind. Promise has questions.
Sure.
If you want to answer my question, if Matt's down to let you stay on the line, I can ask it again. Is the reason that you believe in God because you think Jesus was a good role model?
No, not necessarily. Just I'm saying that
But that's what you said.
think Jesus. No, it's not what I said. I just came to say that I think Jesus is a great
Am I
role model, and
remembering
that's why I'm a
incorrectly? Because
Christian.
you called and you said, I'm a Christian because I
you
think
said I'm
God
a
is
Christian.
Jesus.
Yes, you said I'm a Christian because I find Jesus to be a good role model. And Promise is asking, if someone's a good role model, does that mean that they are in fact divine or God? And the answer obviously is no. So if you believe that Jesus is divine, you cannot justifiably believe that Jesus is divine because you find him to be a good role model. So that your argument makes no sense.
Not the way you spelled it out for me. I mean, I never said that.
It's a lie.
I'll explain it. I'll explain it to you. It means the same as if you called me and you said, hey, I'm a Christian because I think that Jesus was a brunette. Okay, what does that good for you, but what does that tell me? I understand that you think Jesus was a good role model, but why do you believe that Jesus was God?
I didn't say I think he was God. Most secular historians don't think he went around claiming to be God. I
Okay,
do
you
consider
don't
him to
believe
be a
Jesus was
manifestation of God
God.
on earth. I said, sorry?
Go ahead.
Sorry? Oh.
I'm listening. You can continue.
So I think Jesus is a good role model, and so I'm a Christian, and being a Christian is basically, for me, an imitation of Christ. Trying to be just like him, studying what he said, did, and taught.
Are you there? You're cutting out.
Oh. No, I said that the reason I'm a Christian and what that means for me is imitating Jesus as best I can, because he is the greatest role model ever.
Okay, so
that means I want to be like him.
Your best? So I don't want to be like Jesus. I know a lot of other people that I would much prefer to be like. And since I stopped being a Christian, I have progressed in my values and I've been much kinder and more loving, and I've experienced more peace and joy in my life. So that is not a good reason for me to believe in an entire God. So do you have any other reasons, or just that you think this is the best role model you have personally found?
Yeah, that's about it. I'd be curious to know, besides Matt, who's a better role model.
Who's a better role model? Anybody I know. If you want an answer besides Matt, then Arden would be the next person we can point to, and so on and so forth.
I think Eve is a better role model than I am, for sure, in countless ways.
No.
But I've also done a full deconstruction video of the Sermon on the Mount. Now, to the extent that Jesus may have existed and may have said things, we have no idea if we accurately have any of his statements. So it's really difficult to consider whether or not he is a good role model. However, the things that he
That's my main
says,
reason. Yeah.
the things that he says in the New Testament, I don't find particularly good. In some cases, they're good, and in some cases, they're not. And so I have videos on my personal Patreon-supported Atheist Debates YouTube channel that go through the Sermon on the Mount, verse by verse, to talk about what Jesus says and what the impact of that is. And Jesus, by the way, gets scientific facts wrong and encourages people to play victim, never once denounces the Bible's position on slavery, which I've done countless times. So on the subject of slavery, I am more ethically responsible than Jesus ever was in any statement anywhere. Similarly, his support for a model paradigm that includes potentially infinite punishment for finite crimes, that is also immoral. His treatment of his family is immoral. Him telling people to go steal a donkey is immoral. He uses parables to intentionally confuse people. I would say that's immoral. He preaches about hell and consequences that he doesn't demonstrate and that nobody has evidentiary warrant for. He puts himself co-equal to God, which is at least in part why they killed him, something that needs to be justified before anyone can or should believe in it. And so if you're a Christian in the sense that, oh, I'm not saying I believe in a God, I'm just saying I want to be as Christ-like or emulate Christ as much as I can, I look forward to you making a scourge out of leather straps and pieces and shards of glass or stones or whatever else, and then running through the temple to chase the money changers out of there right before you lecture people about how to not call people fools, followed by a couple of verses later, you calling people fools. Now, you're right. I've said the word bitch colloquially a lot of times. And while it was never intentionally or even unintentionally peripherally misogynistic, I recognize that that term is often misogynistic. So to avoid confusion, I actually did an episode, I believe, of this show where I paused everything, apologized for using the term, and said that I would do my best to not do that anymore. But that's not me being misogynistic. That is me correcting a false perception that I might be misogynistic. But you could be right, though. It's entirely possible that I've said and done things that are misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, racist at some point in my life. Here's the difference between me and Jesus. If you show me that what I've said is problematic and why, I'll make changes. When does Jesus change? If Jesus is God, he's the same today as he was yesterday and the day before. Jesus is ever unchanging. And if he's not God, then it's certainly not relevant to anything other than the fact that you are now emulating something you like. Why not pick someone like Jimmy Carter or Bob Ross or Mr. Rogers? There you go. I put it to you that if you take the entire body of work produced by Mr. Rogers and compare it to the entire body of work that you think is attributed to Jesus, Mr. Rogers will win out as a morally superior, more honest, sincere, kind, and knowledgeable individual than Jesus. If you came to me and said, I want to be a Rogerian because I find Mr. Rogers to be so wonderful that I would like to emulate him, me too. I would much rather be like Mr. Rogers than me in many ways and many times. Most of the time I like being me, but Mr. Rogers was better than me on a number of things, just like he was better than Jesus. If all you're doing is looking for a good role model, go with Mr. Rogers. But you don't need to call us to tell us who your role model is, whether it's Paul Bunyan, Mr. Rogers, Jesus, or Hitler. I don't care. This show is about justifying God beliefs, supernatural beliefs, things like that. If you just want to call in and say, I really like what Jesus said, what Moses said. I kind of want to emulate them. Cool. I like what Jimmy Carter did. I like what Mr. Rogers did. I'd like to imitate them. I don't need a God.
Well, it's also, if you need to look to somebody else for everything in life to have, as your sole role model, I don't see that being healthy at all. Jesus barely covered any information and pretty much nothing that's relevant to, today. I think we took a call the other day. Somebody was talking about how they love that Jesus said, do unto others. And I said, I think what's even more helpful, though, is do unto others as you want to have done to you. But what's even better is to say, do unto others as they want done to them. So we can already elevate something that Jesus said and make it so much better. So to me, Jesus is like not a good role model at all. Maybe there's a few things we can cherry pick that are helpful, but they're not exclusive to Jesus whatsoever. We can find people we know way more about that are significantly better role models. And I think a more holistic approach is to have different role models for different aspects of life instead of just dogmatically adhering to this one individual just because you think they said and did some nice things.
I'm with you. We have, let's see, Magnifico, pronouns are he, him, is calling from Wisconsin and has a question, I guess, specifically for me. So go ahead, Magnifico, you're on the line.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, am I supposed to? You can hear me? Okay, good. So I was just wondering, like, what is your standard for evidence? Like, what would you consider evidence with regards to a divine claim?
I have no idea.
Okay, so I guess the problem I maybe have is it feels like atheists apply a standard for evidence to divine claims that they wouldn't apply to other claims.
Well, not all claims are equal. If you say you have a pet dog, you just got a new puppy last night. Sorry,
Very
what?
plausible. We actually do have puppies, for what it's worth.
Yeah. So if you said we just got a new puppy last night, I already have a mountain of strong evidence that puppies exist, that people get them as pets, etc. If you said that you hatched out an invisible flying dragon last night, I would need more than your word because that is inconsistent with the evidence that I already have about reality. For claims of the divine, it would be monumentally arrogant of me to presume that I already know what evidence would delineate between a true claim about the divine and a false claim about the divine. I don't know how to do that. But the people who believe that they have sussed out the divine, they absolutely think they can do that. So they need to explain to me what convinced them and why they think that should convince me. And then I will either agree or say, no, here's why that shouldn't convince me. And so my answer to the question of what evidence would I want for a God is, I don't know. But if there's a God, the normative definitions of the gods of classical theism, and most of what we're talking about 90% of the time, that God should know exactly what would and should convince me, and that God should be capable of providing it. And the fact that this hasn't happened means that either that God does not exist, or that God doesn't want me to know that it exists yet. And either way, it's not my problem, it's God's problem.
So there's an element of seeking involved in Christianity, though. Are you actually saying you're seeking out that thing?
I've been seeking. So I used to be a Christian, and I have continued to seek answers and questions. I'm an obsessive learner, and I've continued to seek my entire life. That's one of the reasons why I'm here, offering you the chance and others a chance to show me what I don't know and why.
Okay, so to maybe describe my own situation, like my belief in God is largely based on indirect evidence. Is that a solid methodology in your situation? Like, I will fully admit, I have never seen God in the flesh. I've never seen an all-powerful deity. The reasons I believe in God are indirect. Is that sound methodology in your case?
I don't know, because I don't know what you mean by indirect evidence. There are claims. Wow. I'm getting ready to release a video, probably in the next month, on the specifics about what should qualify as evidence for a proposition rather than facts consistent with a proposition, because those are two different things. But when you say you believe on indirect evidence, we believe lots of things on indirect evidence. That's not a problem. The issue is the evidence accurate, and is it sufficient to warrant accepting that a God exists?
All right, so spiritual positions are less plausible in your mind.
I don't even know what spiritual means, or how anybody can demonstrate that anything spiritual exists.
Okay, it's more of a goodness. I don't even know how to describe it. But like the thing is, like I said, I think that it feels atheists often demonstrate like they practice skepticism.
Can we not do that? Can we not have you speculate about other atheists? Can we just talk with the three of us about what we think and why? I'm not here to defend any other atheist, and if Promise and I disagree, we're both here and we can address it. But I just pointed out that I don't know what spiritual means. It is a word that is used in so many different ways by so many different people, and if the normative kind of usage that it ties to something related to a soul or divine or whatever else, nobody's ever been able to demonstrate to me how they know that any such thing exists or even possibly exists.
So so your kind of idea here would be to deny the existence of a thing unless it can be demonstrated.
Well, I'm not denying the existence of a thing. I'm denying that there's reason to believe that the thing exists. Atheism is not there is no God. It is I'm not convinced there's a God.
I think that's your idea of atheism. I don't know if that's the...
Which one of us is an atheist that's been doing this for 20 years? That would also be mine.
It would also be yours. Okay. I feel like that has also been kind of a recent development, maybe.
It's like not. We don't need to talk about your speculations about all these other atheists. We're literally right here telling you what our view is, and you're going to want to try to say, well, that's not atheism. Okay, I don't give a fuck. Whatever somebody calls it, I am not convinced that a God is real. Can we focus on that? Rather than the pedantic bullshit semantics of you saying that's not what atheism means, I might as well say you're not a true Christian or whatever religion you are, and it means nothing more. Can we just talk about whether or not there's a good reason to believe in a God? Because you seem to think there is, and I don't agree. And isn't that enough to have a conversation without trying to saddle us with being able to demonstrate that there is no God when you haven't even presented a God claim that is falsifiable or testable?
Okay. For the record, I did say that I believe that is what you think. I believe that is your version of atheism. Okay, so let's start with maybe...
So can I ask you, what would you call me? So I am somebody who does not believe that any gods exist. So what would you call me?
I would call you kind of orthodox atheist, kind of a more traditional idea.
Are you guys that like stuck in your religion that you cannot talk to people like normal? I'm just somebody who doesn't believe in a God. We happen to use the word atheist to describe that. You can call me anything you want. If you have to call me orthodox atheist, that's just really silly, because the bottom line is we don't believe in a God and you do. Now, what's a good reason, and why should we believe in a God?
Is that Matt's position? Because I would have gotten the idea that he wouldn't say that he doesn't believe in a God.
I'm sorry. I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to go on a little quick lecture here. Promise was talking to you. Whether or not Promise and I agree is irrelevant. Why won't you answer Promise based on what she actually said instead of forcing me to white knight? Are you afraid of women? Are you unable to have conversations with independent, strong women?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. Then fucking do it.
Yeah.
Then fucking do it.
Sure. All right, so what was the question?
You don't even remember the question? How rude. Why do we have to do all the work?
Again, please, madam, what was the question?
Sorry, I'm muted. So the answer, or the question that I had for you, based off of knowing that neither Matt nor I believe in any gods, what is your reason for why we should believe?
As I said, my beliefs in God are indirect. I don't know if I could transfer them to you. I think a lot of beliefs in God are predicated on personal experience. A good
Do you
deal
think
of them.
personal experience is a good reason to believe something? Because personal experience is what led me to stop believing.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, how would we determine whether it's a good time to believe or not believe something based off of personal experience?
I think you would have stopped believing because of lack of personal experience, right? Like you would have lacked any type of spiritual experience, and that would have aided your.
I thought I had hundreds of spiritual experiences. I stopped believing because of lack of evidence for the existence of any God or anything supernatural. I had thought the things were. I had credited a God for things that could be explained or couldn't be explained, but I had no reason to believe it was a God. So you can cite lack of
You had,
evidence as my reason for not believing. Same reason I don't believe in any other gods or any other supernatural claims. Same reason I don't believe in ghosts. Same reason I don't believe in any of that. But I'm asking, what's a good reason for me to start believing again? And if your only reason is, well, I had a personal experience, cool, thanks for letting us know. I can't do anything with that. I don't have whatever this is that convinced you. And it sounds like I would have a higher standard than you would, because dreams or like an emotional feeling or seeing something I can't explain, those are not good reasons for me to believe something as intense as an entire religion.
okay, so I think there are other reasons I believe it. That's some of it, though. A good part of it, actually. A lot of it has to do with some study I've done into the Bible itself, some historical stuff as well.
I'm sorry.
I think it's.
I'm sorry. She didn't ask, why do you believe? She asked, why should we believe? What can you present for reasons we should believe?
Why should you believe it? I don't even know if there's a verse in the Bible that actually explains this. No man cometh unto the Father except he's drawn of the Holy
I've
Spirit.
already read it. I've read the Bible many times over. I was in ministry school studying the Bible when I left. So the Bible doesn't mean anything to me. I need a reason, not a claim. So why should I even
It's
care what the
talking about
Bible says? You
the
have
way
to
you
prove to
come
me
to
that a
God.
God exists.
But you're already starting. You're pointing to the Bible. You're going to John 14 and saying, "Here's what the Bible has to say." Why should we care what the Bible has to say? That's what Promise is asking.
Okay, so we're talking about is me proving that God exists.
No,
Do you guys
we're asking. We've asked you,
like
what
scientific
reason can you present why we should agree with you about a God?
And if you don't have one, that's fine. You can say that. If all that you have is something personal to you that you can't convince others with, then own that. I would appreciate the honesty. But if you have convincing reasons for us to change our minds about the existence of a God, that's what we're asking for over and over again.
I might have to think about that. I'll maybe try to call back in now.
Do that. And you're welcome to call back. I'll be on Chewed Gum on Tuesday next week, and I would love to take this call. I'll prioritize the call next week.
Thank you.
Right.
Because I was seriously convinced this was going to be an absolute travesty of a call when we just kept talking past each other and you got focused on definitions. If now you understand, hey, we're looking for a reason why we should believe, and you're willing to go off and think about that and call back, God bless you.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks so much for calling, and thanks for answering honestly.
Yeah, it's really, this is easy. And I get the confusion. I genuinely do. When somebody's like, well, what evidence would you accept? Why do I have to go out and think of this? Here's the thing. Stop focusing on me or other atheists or atheism. I know that we created an inbox show because you guys look at that. It's like, oh, I got to defeat Matt. I got to defeat Promise. I got to defeat this atheist or this group of atheists or the new atheist or whatever. No. All you have to do is say, I'm convinced that a God exists, and my reasons are X, Y, and Z. And then we can evaluate them and say, if you said, I believe because John 14 says this, our follow-up question, which both of us have asked multiple times, why do we care what the Bible has to say? Because the flawed premise there is that you begin by assuming that the Bible has correct information about how to find God. That is an assumption you don't get to make. You don't get to assume that it has correct information. You have to show that it is correct information. And the passage in John actually doesn't say anything specific. John 14:6-7, Jesus saying, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me." That says nothing at all about the method by which one can justify belief in a God. That is a statement. That is a statement about Jesus being the path by which humanity connects to God. This is about Jesus's divinity. It is not about epistemology. The Bible isn't offering a valid and sound argument or any way at all to consider a valid and sound argument. It is merely Jesus saying, "I am the conduit to God." And now the question becomes, is that statement true? Is Jesus the conduit to God? When Jesus says, "If you'd known me, you should have seen my Father also, and from henceforth you would know him, and you've seen him." It is saying, I am an in-person, physical presentation of God, which, by the way, is why he was killed in part. And I know what the Bible says, and so does promise, and we used to believe it. The difference is when we faced these questions of why should we believe that, Promise and I failed. We failed to find an answer or reason to continue believing the thing that we both held dear. I didn't get mad at God. I didn't get mad at a church. I didn't ask for a pony and not get a pony. I didn't have someone die and get mad and curse God. I had a roommate who was an atheist, and I wanted to convince him that I was right because I didn't want to get to heaven and have God say, "Why is this guy you love like a brother burning in hell?" You had a job to do. You had an obligation under 1 Peter 3:15. You had an obligation under the Gospels to go ye therefore unto all the world. You had an obligation to not be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it's the power unto salvation. All of these, I'm an atheist because I took this shit seriously. I'm an atheist because I used to think when I was a Christian that I was right and had good reasons, and I found out that all of my reasons were bad, but I didn't give up then. I didn't say, "Oh, therefore Christianity is false." No. I went to all of the other people who thought that their reasons were good, and I began evaluating those. The primary apologists, the various people who are offering their reasons why Jesus is God or God is real. I listened to what they said and I evaluated it. You know what I found? I found that they, like me, didn't have a good enough understanding of logical fallacies. They, like me, didn't have a good enough understanding of epistemology, the process that we use to make sure that our beliefs are more likely true than not true. Why is it, if there's a God, as so many hundreds of millions, billions of people are convinced there's a God, and they want to look at those of us who don't believe and be like, "Wow, that's pretty brave." Well, maybe it's brave, maybe it's not, maybe we're bucking the normative trend. All these people believe, and yet none of them can present a valid and sound argument supported by good epistemology and good evidence to demonstrate the truth of what they believe. Doesn't mean their belief's false, but it does mean they don't have a good reason to believe it. And this is why, as an atheist, I am not convinced that a God exists. And in some cases, for some gods, I am convinced that they do not exist. If you define your God in such a way that it is logically contradictory to the actual facts, If it is impossible in your argument for your God and this pen to exist simultaneously, then this pen is an absolute confirmation that your God does not exist. And the same is true if you go down a line of a problem of evil that addresses a particular type of God. I like the fact that somebody's going to go off and think and come back with something better. Maybe we'll get more better tonight. Here we go.
Let's hope.
Anna's calling from New York. Anna's pronounced she, her, as a theist, multiple time caller. So we have this ongoing discussion and wants to follow up on a fine-tuned universe. So Anna, welcome. You're on with Promise and Matt.
Hello, Matt and Promise, and Happy New Year. And thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I'm so happy I get to talk to you again.
Thanks for calling, Anna.
So before I start, I have some questions for you, but I just wanted to make a comment about something Promise said earlier, which it's amazing to me how often I find myself cheering on the comments of my skeptical atheist friends on the line. She said that it blows my mind how often I agree with you. You said, with regards to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that maybe a better way to look at that is do unto others as they would have you do, like what they would want.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I have never heard in my life anyone express that. But I have.
Well, you should have been listening to me for the last 20 years because I said it like 17, 18, 19 years ago.
That's probably where I heard it from.
I did an entire video once upon a time about the history of the Golden Rule. And there's also, by the way, Jesus's version is a reflection of what already exists in the Old Testament, a slightly different version. But other versions, sometimes called platinum rules, whatever else, exist in other schools of thought. And I pointed out ages ago, I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder. I'm saying that these things have been raised and people just don't hear about it. And that is, some people want the brutal, honest truth. I would prefer the brutal, honest truth. Other people don't. So if I treat people the way I want to be treated, and I do sometimes, I wind up looking like and being an actual asshole because they don't want to be treated that way. And so even though I don't always do it, I recognize that the better option is to treat people the way they would prefer to be treated. And so if you're the type of person that, like if I'm a doctor and you don't want to know if you're dying, then I shouldn't tell you. But if you do want to know, I should tell you. But it's like, does my ass look fat in these jeans? You better know your audience before you answer.
Yeah. It's like a mandate to impose things on people, like a religious, and it's funny because I've thought this for so long, and I'm really happy to hear I'm not alone in this thinking, and just shows like I need to kind of open my eyes that other people have ideas that I need to look into, because I have thought that so many times in my life where, somebody is hurting me, and I have to remind myself, well, they don't think they're hurting me. They're doing unto others. They would like to be treated this way. To them, this is the kindest thing that they could do. But to me, it's like the meanest thing that you could do. It's like, and it's a real disconnect. And I have to, I know they're coming from a good place. I know that their religion has taught them this. So I could give you examples. Like I have a lot of female friends who, as soon as they see me, like they haven't seen me in a while, oh, Anna, you look great. You've lost weight. You're so beautiful. If they took a 2 seconds worth of thought, they would know that the kindest thing to do is please don't draw attention to my appearance. Don't make me, I'm so self-conscious. And I talk about it all the time. And yet they do it. And they do it because they think they're being nice. And that's how they want to be treated. And
I have something similar. I have something similar it's a big problem for me. I despise, viscerally, angrily despise unsolicited medical advice. I talk about what's going on with my health, and inevitably, kind people who think they have something valuable to share will share it.
Yeah.
And it fucking drives me nuts. And I've had to learn how to tone down my response and just recognize that they're trying to be nice. And it turns out the easiest thing for me to do is just to say, Thanks, and don't say anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and it makes me kind of wonder, like, I just think about how our morality is formed. How do we treat each other? Where does this all come from? Like, why do we people think that we have the right to do this? And how much of it stems from not just our religious upbringing, but sort of the religious, the influence that various religions have had on our culture and on our society and on our way of thinking, that we are so quick to impose ourselves and to impose what we would like on other people and assume, we're all very different and we're all very unique. And it's weird because I am not a skeptical atheist, and yet I find myself agreeing completely with
I know
you.
you're flirting with it awfully hard, Anna.
No, I'm so
Anyway,
troubled, my friend.
I don't want to pretend like you're getting ready to be an atheist tomorrow, but you did call in about something specific, and I want to give I would give you the chance to present it or ask it, and give Promise a chance to jump in, since I can't shut up long enough to not jump in.
No, you and I both. So I love conversation, and I could talk forever, but I'm going to try to be quick because I know there's lots of other people that would like to talk, and your time is so valuable. But some of this has been touched on a little bit in the prior calls. So Thomas, you and I had talked a little bit about how belief is formed, and you made some amazing points. And I'm still not there yet, and I feel like I need to talk about that a little bit. So, you made a really good argument that you can't look at facts and evidence and just choose to not believe something, and I can't argue with that. But I've given it thought, and there's things in my life that I believe I can't prove it to you. The whole premise of these shows, can you prove your God? I can't prove my God. And there's many things in my life that I believe that I can't prove, but I truly do believe it. I don't think that I'm deluded. For example, I really do believe I had the best parents that have ever existed. I had the most loving and wonderful mother and father, and will forever feel like that is one of the most wonderful things of my life that I.
Are you Mr. Rogers' daughter?
Close. If you knew that. To know my father was to love my father. He was the gentlest, kindest, biggest-hearted, smartest human being I've ever met. And I would say the only person who matches him was my mother. So I'm so lucky in that regard. And I know with every particle of my being that they loved me. However, they demonstrated it all the time. I know it. But I could cite for you lots of evidence that maybe pointed to they didn't love me. We had arguments. They were sometimes not cognizant of my needs. Someone on the outside looking at that would say, well, they don't love you, but I know they loved me. I can't prove it. I can't give you evidence and prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt that they loved me, but I know and I believe that they loved me. Isn't religion a little bit like that? And isn't that valid? Isn't that a valid argument? Is it not? It's not faith. I do have evidence. I can't prove it beyond your questioning it. But there are some things where we gather up the evidence, we gather up the impact that things have had on us, and we come to a conclusion. Am I crazy, or does it make sense, what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I think the problem we're getting to here is, love is subjective. It's not
okay.
It's not something we can prove objectively, even just to prove that love is a thing. It's a word that we use to describe all sorts of feelings and acts and things like that. It's already so subjective. So if to you religion is just a subjective, vague thing, then yes, I understand that that's how you're relating to it. To me, it comes down to, is there a God or isn't there? And if so, what is our evidence? Because this should be something that impacts us all. If this God is a part of reality, then where is the evidence for this? And so I think the only way that what you're saying would work for me is if you were saying, I can't prove to you that my parents exist. Well, then I would say to you, I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time believing you that they loved you, because first I need to get to did your parents even exist? Or, if you're we're getting into the weeds here with this analogy, but I think that's where you lose me on that. Is that you're describing a really subjective thing, and I think that's beautiful. And I think what you're saying is that you have been impacted by your beliefs, just like you were impacted by your parents' love. And you can't necessarily prove that to me. You could cite some things and how, your life may have been better for them or even worse at times. But you've been impacted by your beliefs. And I absolutely believe that. That's never what I am confronting people on here. I was very much impacted by my beliefs, to the point that I thought certain experiences I had came from God, when I had no reason to actually think that. It was just confirmation bias that I was dealing with. So I absolutely believe that you feel you have, and that you have been impacted by your beliefs. I just don't see reason to believe the things you believe that you have been impacted by.
And I would add, when you were asking, talking about your parents, and you're like, isn't that kind of like religion? I think where they're different is this: if you tell me you didn't have any parents, that would be an extraordinary claim that would need to be proven. You would be a miracle, your existence. So even without any other evidence, I'm happy to believe that you had parents, because I have good evidence that every human had parents. I'm also happy to believe that your parents loved you, even though I'll never meet them. And because the overwhelming majority of parents love their kids. And love doesn't mean you don't ever fight. Sometimes fighting is how you know somebody actually cares enough. When I argue with people and I get hostile, it's not because I don't like them. It's because, or don't respect them. It's because I like them and respect them enough to hope that they're going to be able to see the error of what they said and change. And things get heated when you care about people. There's often a fine line between love and hate. When my ex-wife there was a moment where I absolutely hated her. But that was because I absolutely loved her. I still love her. She's one of my best friends. But it's a fine line there. And then you talk about, isn't that kind of like religion? Except that whether or not I believe your parents loved you doesn't matter to anyone anywhere. It won't change my life. It is not something I need to devote my life to, donate 10 or 20% of my income to, pray 5 times a day to. Whether or not your parents loved you doesn't impact whether or not I should be in a relationship with a man, a woman, a non-binary person, whether or not this relationship is, continuing on down there without belaboring the point. Religion hasn't even offered evidence that there's a there. And and yet it simultaneously wants to claim that is the most important thing you can know. Imagine for a second that you found out that your father had a different family in another town, or that he was a serial killer. Neither of those are strictly impossible, and yet to you, they are absolutely absurd. And I would agree with you, because the default position is that we don't run around thinking people are duplicitous in keeping 2 families or serial killers unless we have reason to do so. And so in the same way that you can believe your father loved you, and you're probably right, somebody else might believe that your father was a serial killer, and they're probably wrong. But if neither of you can demonstrate it, then it certainly, at a minimum, isn't something we should be spending time denouncing others about or establishing religious foundations about.
Okay. But wow, you made that point so well. And I absolutely can't argue with anything you just said. I'm going to give a lot of thought to that. However, I guess the second, if I'm taking too much of your time, I'm happy to go. I know there's other people waiting, but kind of a corollary. Okay, kind of a corollary to that. I guess maybe what I'm trying to get at, and bear in mind, I agree with you so much. So I'm not arguing with what either of you just said. I 100% agreement. But is there not some room for people with differing beliefs? And I'm not so much talking about religion. You started out, and I love the way you set up this show in a more kind of open way, that people don't necessarily have to debate. They don't necessarily have to lay out their whole belief system on the line and go head to head with you guys, because that's a daunting task. I certainly don't want to go head to head with you on all my beliefs. But sort of casting out, like, I wonder if atheism and some of the skeptical movements agenda to, I don't know if it's their agenda, but we need to do away with all religion. We need to get people to embrace purely factual truth and material truth. Is there not some room to kind of understand that they may not be able to prove it, but that they have some beliefs that are grounded, that aren't crazy?
Anna,
So that's
Anna,
back to
Anna,
yes?
do I have the ability to take away someone's belief?
No.
Do I
no,
have?
and I'm not
Do I
saying
have I ever advocated for the
no, and I'm not accusing
enforcement?
that.
So, no, there's room. There's room for people to have dissenting beliefs. Not everybody agrees with me. Matter of fact, I just called out Jerry Coyne for being a transphobe, along with Richard Dawkins and several others.
Right.
They don't have to agree with me on trans rights, but nothing happens to them. I didn't. The cancel culture is a lie. What it is accountability culture, that if you say something, you're going to be held responsible for it. You can be as hateful and bigoted about anything as you want. You just don't get to do it in my house or on my show. You get to do it elsewhere. So there's room for people, and there's room for disagreement. You know, even amongst people I love. Arden and I don't agree on everything. There are things I like. I like ice cream much better than Arden does. And it couldn't possibly matter less. Even though we are at a position where we got to figure out how we're going to spend our money. Why are we going to spend money on something that, like ice cream, that only Matt really wants? And yet, because we will also spend money on something that Arden doesn't want. There's a nature of compromise. We can compromise and leave space for all kinds of things, but I don't have to compromise about who I'm willing to be nice to or entertain or allow into my house on certain issues. When I say that I want to end religion, I actually also say I want to end any religion that cannot demonstrate that it is true.
Okay.
That is the thing. I'm advocating for truth. If someone's religious beliefs can't be demonstrated to be true, I can't stop them from believing them. I can't stop them from practicing them. But I can say that is irrational and will not be supported by me or by tax dollars, etc.
Okay, fair enough. And that was extreme. And I certainly wasn't accusing you of any of that. Like, and you made a really good point there.
It was just to make a point, yeah.
Yep. So kind of circling back a little bit, you know, there's a lot of debate about, and when these conversations come up, we debate the factuality of things, and you know how much evidence is there, and can you believe it? And I'm not arguing on behalf of a particular religion. I couldn't argue for the Bible or something like that, or any other religious text. I'm sure you guys know it a lot better than I do. But I'm more so talking about belief in God. And I wonder, like, and I think you just kind of hit on it a little bit there. People can have a personal belief system that isn't necessarily an adherent to, it's not indoctrinated, it's not classical like Christianity or Islam. But it's kind of the way they approach the world, and the way evidence has been presented to them, and the way they have been affected by that. So, like, as we come back to, you know, the first ever question I asked you, Matt, when we talked, was I wanted to know your thoughts on the fine-tuned universe. And you gave me a great answer. And I wasn't unfamiliar with that answer. But there are different ways to look at it too. So, like, you gave me the puddle and the water and multiverse, which is absolutely valid. Can't argue with that. Totally agree. However, you know, this isn't me. These are just topics that are out there. I'm sure you've heard everything I'm about to say before. You know, there are those who look at it and think, well, okay, but the multiverse is no more provable than God. And I've looked into string theory, and yeah.
Well, actually, I wouldn't say I agree that it's no more provable. It is certainly, I'm not convinced that it's a testable or falsifiable claim. And that's why I don't advocate for belief in the multiverse. The time to believe in the multiverse or a God is when there's sufficient evidence for it. You talked about not siding with any particular religion, but you're trying to keep space for belief in God. Which God do you want to believe in? And how do you know which God is the right one to believe in?
I can't answer that question. I'm not.
And yet,
so.
And if I asked you, what do you think the winning lottery numbers are going to be for tomorrow? Do you know that?
Of course, yes. No, I don't.
And which do you understand better, or which you're more likely to get correct? The winning lottery numbers for tomorrow, or picking which God to believe in?
Well, what if I don't pick one of the gods on offer? So with that,
how can you say you believe in a God if you don't pick one? That's like saying you bought a lottery ticket without picking any numbers.
Okay, I have to think about that.
Okay,
Anna, not to like claim that you're asking for something that you're not, but to me, I'm picking up on a little bit of maybe seeking some reassurance for where you're at currently with what you do or don't believe. And first of all, I think it's great that you're being honest and saying, like, I do still believe. I have a friend who, she's a Christian, and yet we have almost identical beliefs about everything, even when it comes to religion, except she will tell me, I can't help it. I just still believe in Jesus. I don't know what to tell you. I just still believe. And I respect that she's being honest. I believe her that she still does believe that. Do I think that she has good reasons? No. Am I sitting there like telling her that over and over? No, not at all, because it's not necessary. But I also want to like give you the idea of mystery, because there's so many cool things in this universe that I attach to religion that really are just mysteries or things we don't know yet. And getting more comfortable with that, and sometimes the word mystery makes it easier. It just opens up so many more doors. Thinking, I don't know about this thing. Maybe I'll get to find out someday, or maybe I get to go learn about it. Maybe there's things I just don't know about it that I've been filling in the blank with God or with spirituality, and there's actually some cool scientific reason, or maybe we have no idea and it's this cool mystery. I think that allowed me to still maintain the curiosity and the hope and the joy that I was experiencing when I gave credit to God for things that I had no reason to. So that's just another thing to throw out there to kind of soften some of the blows for you. But I think just maintaining that skepticism is so, so important. And it is also important to be honest. So if you do still believe, no problem. Say I still believe, or whatever it is. I don't think you should be lying about it, but I think you can still leave room to be skeptical and to ask more questions.
Yeah, no, I everything you just said so resonates with me, and I do want to be that person you just described. I don't want to lose my curiosity. I don't want to stop questioning things. I don't want to be indoctrinated. And I guess more so, like, I'm just, when some of these questions come down, we tend to, based on our experiences, lean to one side or the other. And I just maybe think, is it having God on the table as a possibility? Like, that's still open, isn't it? Like,
have either of us suggested that it shouldn't be a possibility?
No, and I'm not accusing that you ever said that. I'm just putting it out there, because I think that's where oh my God, I'm almost afraid to admit it, but maybe that's the truth of where I am. Oh my gosh, maybe I don't believe. Maybe I'm like agnostic. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not agnostic, but that kind of that thinking, like there's like the multiverse thing. Versus
Anna, I think
was it God? Side more towards.
I think
it could be God. Valid.
I think you leave anything you need to leave on the table, and then you ask all the questions you can about all of those things. There's no problem with that. When I lost my belief, the only thing that was on the table for me was God. And then I had to bring other things on the table and start asking all these questions about all kinds of things and learning about all sorts of things, So I think the place that you're in is super normal to feel that way, and it's okay to be patient with yourself, and it's okay if you need to leave something on the table longer and turn over every stone. If that's what it takes for you personally, then do that. And I think that's what you're doing. You're asking all these questions and continuing to learn. And I think you're on an amazing track, and it's okay to also be patient and have patience with yourself.
Yeah, and I also think, thank you. That's incredibly
Of course.
validating to hear. And I also think it just makes life interesting too. Like having these discussions are interesting. I love philosophy. I love science. I don't want to become somebody who thinks she knows all the answers. You know, I've never been that sort of a person. And I resist it. Like I resist getting to a place where I feel like I've got the answer now. I don't have to talk about it anymore. Let's shut the door on conversation. And so I just sometimes feel like, well, you know, even if you are convinced that, like even if somebody is convinced that Jesus Christ is a myth, and the Bible is kind of a toxic thing, it's still interesting to hear like some of the more intelligent people talk about the various aspects of it that they find, you know, from a philosophical perspective, like what they find. And this was some of the earlier callers touched on some of this, you know, and you guys had such a brilliant discussion of that. You know, like somebody mentioned that he felt that Jesus was the greatest role model. Well, there's a gazillion role models in the world. I can name a bunch of role models, but that
Anna,
excludes.
how is that different from having a book club reviewing other fiction books?
Yeah.
I mean, if all we're doing is looking at a character and evaluating a character as a potential role model, I have no objection to that. I think that there are some potentially decent role models, even in the Bible or in a number of different books. I think there are good role models in Marvel films and bad role models in Marvel. I mean, we can do this for anything. And if you're just looking because it makes life interesting, I agree, which is why instead of just being focused on one potentially fiction book of the Bible or whichever other religious book you're using, I'd rather engage with a lot of different ones because the Bible reflects at a minimum the thoughts and feelings and histories of a particular group of people over a span of time. But all these other books and sources address and deal with other people at other times. And whatever we can learn from the stories of Moses, whether he's real or not, doesn't matter. There's things that we can learn about the stories because they're reflections of the people who wrote them and the people they lived around and everything else, whether the story's real or not. We can do the same thing with, I'm going to avoid referencing like certain things, but we can do the same thing with any fiction book. You can look at Wanda, the Scarlet Witch's story arc in MCU, and talk about where she was at different points and all this other, or you can not engage with the fiction. And if you're the type of person that enjoys this, and not everybody does, and I probably don't, you can go out and talk to actual living people right now and get their lived experiences, talk about what's going on in their life. And now, instead of trying to have a discussion about whether or not Jesus or Superman would win with or without kryptonite, we can set all that aside and say, how are we going to help out the people who live with us right now in this world in 2025, who can't afford food, who can't afford medicine?
Yep.
I think there's great things to learn from various stories, including religious stories. I just think that some people are walking away feeling particularly impacted by a story to the point that they want to elevate it beyond what it should be and then try to emulate it. And so even for the person who finds Jesus to be a wonderful role model and wants to emulate him, cool, go do that. I don't need to hear about it. It's uninteresting to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's so much for me to think about. We
got to move on.
And,
but I appreciate that you've got some stuff to think about. Think about it. Call us back. Don't forget about recovering from religion. But yeah, we always like hearing from you, Anna.
Okay, thank you both so much, and Happy New Year. And it's been lovely talking with you. Okay,
Happy New Year.
Bye.
So there we go.
Love Anna.
It's anytime there's, granted, I also like people who, so I can put on my, I'm not going to do it, but I can put on my Christian hat and go, let me tell you what Anna's struggling with. And you could look at everything that Anna said from a Southern Baptist perspective, or a Pentecostal perspective, or a Presbyterian perspective, or a Catholic perspective. And each one of them might have an explanation for what has gone wrong in Anna's life, such that she's struggling with her faith. And that if she would just do this and this, Jesus would bring her back to the fold. That is easy to do, or easy to say. It seems impossible to demonstrate. And this is why, while there are people who genuinely have a better understanding of the theology and stuff and can make better arguments and would try to argue for certain things, they may not be as honest with themselves as Anna is. And listening to Anna potentially struggle with the recognition that, ooh, maybe I'm agnostic, or maybe I'm a little agnostic, or maybe does little agnostic even make sense? Oh my gosh, what if I'm just holding out the possibility of God? In my view, I'm not convinced that any proposed God I've ever heard of is possible. But I'm open, despite the fact that I'm not convinced that any of them are possible. I'm open to someone demonstrating that I'm wrong, that in fact a God is possible and probable and true. Because there are people who run around saying, I know that I know that I know that I know that Jesus Christ is Lord. That's a lot of no's. And if you get the wrong number of no's in there, it doesn't change anything because they're K-N-O-W's and not N-O's, so you're not negating anything. But it is a level of confidence or an expression of confidence that is completely irrelevant as to whether or not they actually do know. I can say, I know, and I'm 100% certain that the sky is pink and orange 24 hours a day. I'm wrong, but I could say that I know it. And if I say it enough, I might even convince myself that I know. We know how delusions work, and we know how groups reinforce certain things. So let's see, since we've got other callers on the line, if somebody can present something more than that. So Tim's calling from Kentucky, pronouns are he, him, and Tim says he has proof for the triune God of Holy Scripture. So, hey, Tim, how are you? Tim, you're calling. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow. Oh man.
Tim sat
They're
on
not
hold
sending their
for
pet.
52 minutes. 52 minutes, claiming to have proof of the triune God. I promise I will not be holding Tim's proof against anybody else who thinks they have proof. But Kevin's calling from Canada. Pronouns are he, him. Kevin wants to know why we think that teaching kids about hell and demons is harmful. How you doing, Kevin?
Hi, how's it going? Hello, Matt and Eve, or Promise, or can I call you Promise? That's your real name, right?
Promise is great. Yeah, that's my actual
Okay,
name.
sure.
We're slowly getting everybody used
problem.
to it.
No problem. Nice to meet you, Promise. Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you.
What
do you want to call us about today?
I needed to call about why teaching kids about Jesus and the resurrection and hell and demons is harmful. But before I get into that, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions, or?
You can try, and then we'll see if we're going to answer them.
Sure. Promise, a question for you. So I watched your recent video on TikTok about that you're no
I don't have
longer
any
convinced
TED
that.
Talks.
No, I'm saying TikTok.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I misheard you. I was like, that
No,
would be
it's
really
okay.
cool
No
if I
worries.
had
No
that.
worries.
I don't. Okay, so my
You're good.
TikTok,
You're
the
good.
one that I posted today about my story.
Yes, your TikTok, your recent TikTok. Yes, I was. You were saying that you're no longer convinced that Jesus died for you, and I wanted to ask, why is that for you? Before I get into the topic.
Sure. So I didn't word it that way. I'm not convinced that any gods exist, and that would include Jesus. I'm not convinced that anybody rose from the dead. And that's because I don't have a good reason to. I have no reasons to
Yes.
believe that those claims are true.
Yes. Okay. And you've been an atheist for 8 years now?
Yep.
That's very good. Okay, that's good to hear. Thanks for being honest. And what about you, Matt? Do you mind answering that for me?
Answering why I don't
About
believe. I don't
why-
believe because I don't see sufficient evidence to warrant belief, and I've been an atheist for I don't even remember how many years now, 25, 30, something like that.
Yes.
I don't recall.
Okay. Okay, I see. So the topic I was going to talk to you about and the questions I'll try to answer. So I was wondering to ask about why teaching kids about Jesus and the resurrection and blood sacrifice and demons in hell are harmful.
Because we don't have any reason to think they're true. And if you say that something's true when you can't demonstrate it's true, that's a problem.
Yeah, and we have actual studies now that they're working on showing how harmful it is for kids to grow up believing things like hell and demons. I personally experienced intense fear, night terrors, all of that from being taught those beliefs. It damaged my brain. I've had to go through lots of therapy. It's really harmful to scare kids with that. I mean, I remember going in to see Passion of the Christ and the graphic violence and all of that, which I wasn't allowed to watch any violence, but then that was shown to me. And if you've seen that, you know, it's very, very graphic. I don't think any children should be shown that at the age I was shown that. So when you do that and you tell a kid this is true and there's not a good reason to tell them that that's true, then you're just using scare tactics. It's the same reason I think it's really shitty when parents tell their kids, if you don't listen to me tonight, a monster is going to come out from under your bed. That's abusive, in my opinion. So it's psychologically harmful to children to teach them things like that.
What about Jesus going on the cross? Is that also harmful to kids too, to teach that?
Is it true?
About Jesus going on the cross?
I don't think it's true. So I think it's fine for kids to learn about religions and learn about what people believe. I think it's wrong to teach a child something as fact when we don't have any reason to believe that it is fact.
Additionally, it's not so much that it's a problem to tell them the story. It's a problem to tell them the story is true. And when you tell them that the reason that Jesus was slaughtered was because they were born bad and they need Jesus to die and suffer so that God can forgive them, that is a little bit more problematic. Not every kid at every age has even the capacity to understand that in the abstract. And there are kids who spend their life thinking that they're the reason Jesus died, or they're the ones that are to blame if their friend doesn't go to heaven. And all of it is based on a story that you can't demonstrate. So we've already answered, we object to teaching kids things that we can't demonstrate are true. And especially when those things relate to a lesson about how they should live their life. It's one thing to say, hey, somebody, in Greek mythology was stuck rolling a boulder up a hill over and over again as a punishment. That's not the same as saying you are the result of inherited sin, and you are the reason that Jesus needed to die to serve as a loophole for God to forgive you. It's not just, it'd be like asking, hey, is it a problem to teach that on the third day the stone was rolled away? No, but you're skipping the parts of it's not true, and you don't have any reason to say it's true, but you're overlooking the things that are actually problematic that are being taught, in addition to the fact that they're not true.
I see. So children, but you suggest that children should not be hearing these type of things, right? In your opinion?
If it involves, yes. Here's a thought. Here's a thought, Kevin. Sure. Kevin, do you have any kids? I'm going to guess no.
No, not yet. No, not right now. No.
Can you imagine if you were the parent of a kid right now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Would you allow me and Promise to sit down and read stories of our choosing from the Bible to your child?
If you two are Christians?
Well, why does that matter? If I'm reading what the Bible says, why would it matter whether or not I'm a Christian? Does the book say something
Just
different to
curious, but-
Christians than it says to me?
No, I was just curious, but what was the question again?
Would you allow Promise and I to read stories of our choosing from the Bible to your kids?
No.
No. Why not? Is it because you think there are things in the Bible that kids shouldn't be hearing?
Not until they grow up, at least.
Thank you, Kevin. Congratulations.
Yep. That's good. We're all
We
in
agree.
agreement.
Not until they grow up, at least, in my opinion.
Yep.
Because children are innocent, obviously.
I don't think that.
So, you don't think they're innocent, Matt?
No, I've actually been around kids, and I've been a kid. Kids are not all innocent. And by the way, that's biblical. The Bible doesn't say that children are innocent. It knows that every human being can lie, can cheat, can steal, can be corrupt. We are all given over to sin, and it doesn't happen. It's just that children don't become responsible to God according to some religions until they reach a certain age, or the age of accountability. But even that isn't attested to by the Bible. But generally speaking, yes, we refer to kids as innocents. So I won't belabor that point.
Yes. So I know you two have other calls to make, so I'll try to make this short as I can, so not to take up too much of your time. But I have two more questions to ask, if you don't mind. So
Let's try one and see how it goes.
Sure. So with you, Matt, first, when you were a Christian, right? Do you believe that if children don't believe in Jesus, they go to hell? Did you believe that when you were a Christian?
At some point, yes. But at other points, we had a slightly different take on it. The growing up Southern Baptist, the view was that God chooses who goes to heaven, that salvation is a gift of God by God's grace through an exercise of our faith, and that you are born into sin and in need of redemption, but that God was just and would not necessarily send kids to hell, but we don't have any access. The Bible says only God knows who's going to hell and who's not. And so if your 1-year-old dies, the presumption is that we don't know whether your child went to hell or heaven, but God does, and God is just. And God knows that child's heart and that child's past and what would have been that child's future had it not died, and that God will do the right thing. That's what I believed.
And you, Promise?
It varied at different times in my life, but I'm just not understanding how that's relevant to anything.
What do you mean?
What difference does it make?
I don't
What Promise
understand how
believed
it's
about what happened to
relevant.
children?
Yeah. I don't believe
because,
any of it anymore.
Yes, because I believe that all children do go to heaven and be with Jesus, even if they don't believe.
Why?
Then
Because
all the
they're
more
innocent.
reason to not tell them about demons or hell or Jesus or any of that. No reason to tell a kid any of that until you think, what age is it? Is it on their birthday at midnight and then they start being able to go to hell? I don't understand how that would even work.
What's your
Because the reason I'm
justification
saying
for
it-
thinking that? What's your justification for thinking that kids automatically go to heaven? Is it anywhere in the Bible?
Not that I know of, but I know that Jesus adores children, so
How do you know that?
he welcomes, because he's a loving God.
How do you know that?
can't really explain it. But I
Why
know
doesn't
that
he adore
is.
me? Do you think he adores me?
Yes.
Do you think I'm going to hell because I don't believe he's a god?
To be honest, yes.
Right. See how that's not adding up?
Do you have access to God's mind more than Promise or I do?
No.
Then how is it that you can have views about what God will do and we disagree with you and you still think you're right when you recognize that neither of us knows the mind of God?
I don't have access to what Jesus thinks, so that's up to him, not me.
Well, then how can you make statements like knowing that God is a loving God and Jesus loves children if you don't have access to what's in God's mind or what's in Jesus's mind? Checkmate.
I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, that's why I said checkmate. Go off and think about it, Kevin. If you come up with an answer for how you know about what God knows, call us back and explain it. But in the meantime, Promise and I don't believe the Bible. We don't have views about what is going to happen. We don't think anybody's going to heaven or hell, let alone a kid.
Matt,
Nobody is.
Matt, do you mind if I say one more thing before I drop the call?
Yes, I do. We got to move on. Appreciate it, though.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
Bye, Kevin.
Let's just end on a solid finish rather than distracting and spending more time, because there's also like 4 other people on hold.
Let's do it.
None of them are theists, but 2 of them are quasi-theistic. And so let's start with Andy, she, her pronoun, or she, no preference pronouns in the Midwest, who is spiritual. Everyone should develop their own spirituality. Andy, I'm excited because I'm hoping that you can explain to me what the hell spiritual means and why we should work to develop it.
Well, good evening to both of you. It's been fun sitting and listening to everybody talk. So I think
Thanks.
I pitched this idea, not that everyone should have a religion or a spirituality or anything, but that actually when you start to look at the scientific part and you look at, like, just pull up a map of the world religions tree and then pull up a map of a phylogenetic tree of creatures. So
Hey,
let's
Andy,
talk daisies. Let's better yet.
Hey, Andy, can I just ask real quick, because I'm really interested in the question Matt asked, because he asked what spirituality even is, which is what I want to know. Before you start talking about everything else, I would really love if you answer Matt's initial question, because otherwise we're going to have no idea what you're even talking about.
Right. So I think what I'm trying to show you is that, so I'm a farmer, and I also grew up in a church. And as my experience with nature and science, all different arrays of science, it's all seeing reality. And the magnificence of how it all works together and how it weaves into a 3D reality that we're in, or however you want to look at that, to me, that is sort of like there's something more.
Sure. But are
And
you
my
able to
point to this
define
is
spirituality? Is spirituality, are you saying it's defined as something more, or what? Like, if we have to define it, like a dictionary would, how would, like, what's your one sentence, like, this is what spirituality is, just so we can know what you're talking about?
I would say it's the moment at which you ask, like, how did I get here?
Spirituality is the moment when you question why you exist. That's spirituality.
Well, for me, I guess it is, and I have a very unusual.
Okay, I don't give a fuck
I come
for
at
you.
it from a different.
I don't care about esoteric. Oh, here's what I think. Cool. How is that useful to anyone for you to say, I think spirituality is the moment when people question why they exist, when earlier you were saying everybody should be involved in spirituality? Are you saying everybody should question why they exist?
I think that they should consider questioning why they exist.
Cool. And what is it? What does your view get us?
Well, to go back to my point, when you look at a phylogenetic tree and you think about human
Oh my
consciousness,
God.
if you look at it, can I finish?
No, I find this annoying as fucking obnoxious. I asked what the fuck
Oh,
spirituality
okay.
was. Shut up, I'm talking.
You know what?
Shut up, I'm talking.
I'm going to go ahead and hang up because I don't want to be cussed out. Thanks. Bye.
Cool, fuck off. Here's the thing. This is what I've been saying for ages, that people do not and cannot define what spirituality is. Part of the problem here is that she wants to go on about, if you look at a phylogenetic tree and think about consciousness. I'm sorry, I've thought about consciousness, I've lectured about consciousness, and I've looked at phylogenetic trees. You are attempting to use mystery and appeals to things and all kinds of stuff. Basically, you don't have any better idea of what is or should count as supernatural than anybody else. But you think if you can fucking blab on and on and on with a bunch of sophistry, that you will buffalo the rest of us into buying your bullshit that you accept. Science does not deal with the spiritual or the spirituality because those things are not sufficiently defined. So when you try to go down the aisle of, let me tell you what science says about spirituality, you sound dumber than a sack of hammers and more annoying than almost any other theist I've ever had to engage with, because you think that you've got science on your side when you absolutely do not. Not even close, not for a second. Science has nothing to say about the supernatural. It is untestable, unfalsifiable, and your position is a waste of everybody's cognitive ability to even spend time thinking about for more than a couple of seconds. You couldn't define what spirituality is, and I won a chess game while explaining this to you. Goodbye.
Also, your mug. This is the perfect time to plug it.
Yeah. There we go. Look at the trees.
That we get that
Now,
argument
I
so
wanted to say,
often.
look at the daisies. I'm a farmer. If you go out and look at the daisies and the phylogenetic trees and the way everything works together, it just seems like there must be more. And spirituality is the moment at which you consider, why am I here? I don't give a shit for your esoteric navel gazing. This is why I hate the term spiritual, because none of you people who use it can explain what the fuck it is. And yet you all pretend like you are better and smarter and smugger than the rest of us. And you are definitely smugger.
Well, and when you hold some term like that so loosely that you can just apply it to whatever, then I can say, cool, I'm extremely spiritual and I practice it via skepticism. You know, you make a word completely lose its meaning when you don't even define it. And I can just say, well, that's my spirituality and that's how I question things. It's very frustrating.
Yep. Well, we got 3 calls here that may or may not be theistic, or well, they're not necessarily atheistic. But Ted's calling from Nevada, pronouns are him, and Ted believes in a higher power. I don't know what that means. Maybe we'll get to it. Ted has a question about Christianity and forgiveness. So go ahead, Ted.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good.
Good. How are you?
All right. Happy New Year's to you. Anyway.
Thanks.
In the Bible, it says that according to Christianity, we're forgiven for our sins.
No.
Then why do we still die, and why do women still have pain in childbirth?
Because the Bible doesn't say all sins are forgiven, or that you're not going to die, or that there's not going to be pain in childbirth. The Bible says that you can be forgiven for your sins and gives the process by which you can be forgiven for your sins. But what that means is that God will not continue to punish you in an afterlife determination. Man's rejection and disobedience against God brought sin and death into the world, and sin and death will remain in the world until God puts an end to sin and death when he sends the devil and his angels into the infernal fires.
So you're saying the deck is stacked against us no matter what we do?
I'm saying I'm going to take a bathroom break and let you talk to Promise because you called in with some bullshit. I gave you actual theology, and you just went on sophistry.
No, I understand.
So you
I
don't
just,
need me. Be right back.
okay.
So, Ted, are you just calling to kind of add on to say, Christianity is BS because this part doesn't make sense?
Correct.
Yeah, but I don't even need to go that far. There's so many other reasons. But like Matt was saying, that's not even part of the deal that was made. So the curse is still there, that still exists, and it goes away when we get to heaven. That's what they believe. Matt and I don't believe any of that is true because we don't believe in any gods.
Okay. So on the other question about God or the higher power,
Sure.
if there might be something in the Bible that is true, right?
Sure.
Okay. So in the Old Testament, it says that God spoke the universe into existence. And in the New Testament, it said that God is the Word and the Word is God. Now, the Word would be a sound, which is a frequency. And if you look at everything in the universe is run by a frequency. We requires 3 frequencies for us to be alive: our heartbeat, our breath, and our mind, right? So
something making a frequency doesn't mean we require. You're already losing me. But hold on. Are you saying that you believe in a God because of the Bible, but also you don't believe in Christianity because of the Bible?
correct. I asked, is there might be some truths in the Bible that nobody understands?
What I mean by truths is I don't mean any kind of supernatural claims at all. That's not what I'm agreeing with you on at all. I don't believe in
No,
any of the
I'm
supernatural
saying
claims that the Bible makes. And I don't believe
I'm
whatever this claim
saying,
you're making about frequencies. I have no idea what you're even talking about.
well, the Bible says that God is the Word and the Word is God. A
Hold on.
word
Can I
is a
ask you,
sound,
Ted?
a sound
Let
is
me
a
ask you.
frequency.
So, Ted, you just told me the reason that you don't believe in Christianity is because of this statement that you made when you called in about our sins being forgiven and not being forgiven. But now you're saying also you do believe in a God because of the Bible. So, why do you think part of the Bible is enough for you to believe in an entire higher power, but then part of it is just complete BS and makes zero sense to you? You're just picking what you like and what makes sense to you?
Well, that's why I asked the question: are there something that might be true in the Bible and people don't understand it? Because if God is nothing more than a frequency, we look at the universe, we look at everything is
Hang on.
moving in a frequency.
Where did you get
Earth
this
rotates
nonsense?
in
Where did
frequency.
you get this notion that God is nothing but a frequency?
God is the Word and the Word is God. Okay, in both the Old
Okay,
and New Testament, that's
I don't know. In,
okay.
in,
So
in
if you,
John, stop talking. Stop talking. In John 1:1, when it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God," what Greek word is used there for that is translated into English as word?
I don't know.
You don't know, and you don't know what it means, and so you're going with your own personal, uninformed view of an English translation of a Greek text, and then you're extrapolating that to think that because words are phonemes, God is a frequency. You don't understand the Bible, which we demonstrated with the very first question that you asked, where where I already answered this, and now you're going to continue on by pointing to another thing in the Bible that you don't understand. So to answer your question, yes, there are plenty of things in the Bible that people don't understand, and every word out of your mouth today is a prime example of exactly that.
Correct. That's why I asked the question, because I don't know. And the only thing that really talks about a God per se is the Bible. And
No, it's not.
so
Not even in the ballpark. Are you not familiar with the Bhagavad Gita or the countless other religious texts from other religions? Are you as uninformed about them as you are about Greek?
it seems so.
Cool.
That's why I
Go
called,
off
and I
and,
wanted
do
somebody
some
who would
research.
actually tell me an
Go
honest
off and
answer.
do some research and stop acting like you know stuff when you don't.
No, the reason I asked the question is because I don't know.
No, you called in with particular concepts about God and about sin, concepts that any decent Christian apologist could have answered. And you forced me to put on the Christian apologist hat to teach you the disgusting view of what the Bible says, because you are going to go out like so many other atheists or non-Christians and talk against Christianity while stupidly not understanding what you're talking about. So you make the rest of us look foolish. Just like when people go after Baptists for Catholic doctrine. Catholics might believe that the Eucharist turns into the actual body of Christ. You can mock Catholics about this, and you can say, hey, when it turns into the body of Christ, is it the foreskin or a toenail or what? Ha, 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 ha. But Baptists don't believe that the Eucharist actually turns into the body of Christ. So if you go after Baptists for what Catholics believe, you look ridiculous and make the rest of us look ridiculous. And when you suggest that the Bible says sins are forgiven, when what it actually is talking about is whether or not there will be punishment beyond this life for sin, whether you will be held accountable beyond this life for sin, and at no point does it not say there won't be consequences in this life, then you demonstrate that you not only do not understand the Bible in its original language, you don't understand it in English, and you haven't bothered to do any work, and yet you want to go around explaining to people the little gotchas that you think you discovered. Close your mouth, go off and research, listen to what apologists have to say, then listen to what counter-apologists have to say. If you want to do a Bible study, there's plenty of opportunities to do it so that you don't wind up saying things that look and sound ridiculous.
Okay. Well,
Thanks,
that didn't
Ed.
really answer my question, but thank you anyway.
Okay. This one's pretty easy. Vlad's calling from Italy, and Vlad's pronouns are he, him, and wants to ask us why we converted to atheism. And Vlad, the answer is we didn't.
But I thought you were a Christian before.
I was.
So what
Are you
in the first
asking-
place to be Christian? I mean, why you became Christian? What role?
not
What was the?
What are you asking, Vlad?
So, from what I know, you before were a Christian, right?
Yes.
So, why? I mean, what was the thing that drew you in the first place to this religion? I mean, I don't see. I mean, I grew up in a religion setting, Catholic, but I also studied with Jehovah's Witnesses, but more that I went in this discussion studies, and more actually I was thrown away because it made no sense to me. So I don't understand why so many people actually become religious in the first place.
So
Why did you
I
become
grew-
religious in the first place? Go ahead.
Yeah, so where I grew
I'm dealing
up,
right
first
now
of-
with a person that's kind of dear to me.
No.
But-
Vlad, stop. We're answering your question. Promise is going to tell you why she became a Christian, and then I will tell you why I became a Christian.
Okay.
So I grew up in the South, which is very, very religious here in the US. And my parents and their parents and everyone else, they were all Christians. All my aunts and uncles. To this day, as far as I know, I'm the only atheist in my, general family. And that's what everyone believed. Everyone was pastors and missionaries. And so it didn't occur to me to believe anything else. I truly believed, but I didn't think there was an alternative. It's like if your parents teach you the color red is red and green is green, you grew up thinking those things. So I thought the things that I thought were God and etc. So I grew up that way, in short, and it was convincing to me because that was the information I was given as though it was fact when it wasn't.
And in my case, I walked down the aisle at a revival in a Baptist church at the age of 5 because I was convinced by the pastor that Jesus wanted to save me and that I needed to pray to have Jesus come into my heart. My entire family was religious. I grew up surrounded by it. And then I spent every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night in church having those beliefs reinforced. That continued until I was an adult. And when I set out to demonstrate that my beliefs were real, I found out that I didn't have good reason, that I had in fact just been indoctrinated, that I had bought into things young and then made rationalizations to keep believing them. And so I could not continue to believe. When I say we didn't convert to atheism, I'm saying there's nothing to convert to. We just no longer believed theistic claims. Sorry if that was confusing.
Okay, I use this wrong term then. Yeah, but to me that sounds a bit like brainwashing. So you think that this also depends also on the person, the psychology? Because I was teaching the
Yes.
same thing. I was teaching, but I never. I mean, I was always skeptic on these things because it didn't. I studied art because I don't want us to reject things blindly. I mean, I think it would be foolish to reject things straight away. So I just studied the things, the Bible and other things, but other religious scriptures. But more I studied, and actually more the things made less sense to me. So actually, I'm not completely atheist. I mean, I don't exclude the existence of a higher being. I don't exclude that.
Neither of us exclude the possibility, but that there's no such thing as not entirely an atheist. Atheist is just the name, the label for anybody who is not convinced that a God exists. That's us.
Yeah. Because, for example, I had a relative that he said he was atheist. He doesn't believe in any possibility of a God. I mean, he said there's nothing that exists beyond us. So to differentiate, I said, yeah, I'm agnostic because I don't believe in any religious God, but I don't exclude the existence of some other being or phenomenon that people can call God.
Yeah.
So okay,
yes.
It's just what. And a last thing, if I can ask, how do you deal with someone that's close-minded? Because there's a person dear to me, and this person is like religious. She goes to church, but every time we have a discussion about religion, she like tends to pick the good things, but when I talk about the main wrong things in the Bible, she kind of ignores me, and then she kind of shrugs it off, like she ignores me, and we end up like in bad terms. I mean,
well,
we deal with that regularly. I don't know that we've figured out what to do about it either. If somebody's willing to be honest in a discussion, they are, and if they're not, I reach a point personally where I say, "Cool, I'm not interested in discussing this with you then, because I'm not going to waste my time talking to somebody who isn't engaging in an honest discussion, because what's the point for either of us? Let's, and sometimes with friends like that, you can say, we're just not going to talk about religion. Let's talk about anything else. Sometimes you realize that those people are not willing to engage honestly in other aspects of life too, and then it's not really that great of a friendship. That's up to you to decide.
Yeah, it's not your job to convince every friend of yours, but if somebody wants to have a conversation and you have the conversation and you think it's productive, have it. If it gets to the point where the conversation is no longer productive, move on.
Okay. Now, it's not only that. I don't want to convince anyone, but it's something about moral questions or that thing that I got a bit upset sometimes because they like point in a direction, but if I then point out that this is an artist can behave like that too, like he begins to say, oh no, an artist can never be good like a Christian. So that's his reasoning.
Okay. Well, can they prove that atheists can't be good? Because I already know that atheists can be good. What I don't know is whether or not Christians can be good. Because if they're instructed by their God to be bigoted, then they are prohibited by their religion from truly being good.
Okay, well, that's all that I wanted to know. Thank you for the answers, and have a good evening.
Awesome.
Thanks, Vlad. You too.
Yeah, it's if there's somebody who actually thinks, oh, atheists can't be good people, I like them to demonstrate the truth of that.
Right.
The truth is, almost everybody has the capacity to be good, and to be bad, to be evil. In the right situations, there are, who knows what somebody's going to do. The notion that you can sum up the entirety of someone's character as this is a good person or this is an evil person is preposterous. I despise Donald Trump. I think he's dumber than a sack of hammers. Doesn't mean he's not smart about something. I think he's evil on a number of different topics. Doesn't mean he's not good on some topic. He might, there might be somebody somewhere that he treats decently. Who knows? Maybe he really likes one of his kids. But I don't tend to summarize the entirety of somebody's character that way. And by the way, while I say, even when I pointed out that I'm not necessarily convinced Christians can be good, I had to put that caveat on there that if their religion is one that encourages and requires them to be bigots to be a part of the religion, then they are in opposition to being good all the time that way. But there are plenty of generally good people who are atheists and generally good people who are Muslims and generally good people who are Christians and Scientologists, not Republicans, but plenty of other categories where there are good people. That was a joke, but Promise missed it, so I didn't even get a half a smile.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat.
No, it's fine.
I believe that
All right.
it was good.
Are we ready to take the final call for today?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Calling in from Texas is Taryn, pronouns are he, him, and there's a quote here from John Waters that I guess I'll let you say if you wanted to, but what are we talking about?
Well, John Waters said this thing I think about a lot, where he said that I'm glad I was raised Catholic because sex will always be dirty, where he's obviously being facetious. I think it's a funny quote, but there's obviously an underlying perversity to a lot of Christianity. They spend so much time thinking about sex because they spend so much time resisting sex. And I really feel strongly there's an underlying sickness to a lot of it. If you think about going into a dark room with a man and sharing your dirtiest thoughts.
Whoops. I'll just go ahead and apologize to Taryn. Taryn, I was not convinced that you were an honest interlocutor, so I hung up on you. Something about the way you started framing stuff, that when you talk about going into a dark room with a man to share, boom. I had already had it locked and loaded to hang up on you, and so I did. And if I did so inappropriately, and you were about to make a wonderful point, then I apologize, and feel free to call back to any one of the shows that's coming up to make your point. But maybe, I think my potential concerns might be justified, especially if all you're going to do is say that, that if your point is that religious folks are often sex obsessed in part because of or alongside the specific prohibitions by their religion with regard to sex, yes, we know and we agree. But none of that has anything to do with whether or not it's true. Because here's the thing. If the Bible is accurately describing the God that exists, then their concerns about human sexuality are at least consistent with God. So while we might look at them and say these things are absurd and they're making, they're exploiting humanity's, nature and trying to say, oh, your nature is corrupt and that it's exploitative. Yeah, we already know all that. But that's us disagreeing with it, which is not the same as showing that it's not true. And so Promise and Promise hosts Chewed Gum, which is at least in part, if not primarily, about aspects of Christian culture, religious culture, that subjugates and sidelines women in particular. And frequently, it's about their sexuality. It's not men who are unclean and unable to come into the tabernacle. They are if their testicles are damaged. But women are unclean every month for a period of time. Just
I think it's 2 weeks
filthy.
a month.
Yeah.
So half the month.
And their testimony isn't as good. They're not as valued as good. They can't own property the same way that men can. I did an entire video about the Bible's worth of women. So Terrence, sorry if I hung up on you inappropriately. But I'm on a hair trigger for certain phrases, and you got close enough that I figured I'd go ahead and shut it down. So despite the fact that you referenced John Waters, which I think I like that you mentioned John Waters. That John Waters quote, by the way, that he's glad he was raised Catholic because that keeps sex dirty. It's really, I mean, I went and saw John here in Austin do his Christmas show 6 or 7 years ago. It was outstanding, and John's brilliant. And I have to John, if you're watching, if you're ever watching, we can hang out and talk about it. But yes, I like the fact that basically what it is the recognition that there's something that's better about sex for many people if it's taboo or forbidden. The people who are voyeurs or peeping toms, or who want to do the thing that they're not supposed to. That's why how much of the porn searches are, stepbrothers, stepsisters, stepmom, stepdad, all these things that would normally be, and perhaps in almost every case should be, a discouraged or forbidden relationship, but that taboo makes it more appealing. And so that's kind of what John Waters, I think, is talking about. So I don't have anything else on those calls. We've shut down call in studio, and that means it's time for the super chats. We're going to be reading every super chat that comes in that's over $10 a month. Huge appreciation to everybody who's already sent it in. I know there's going to be more coming in while we're reading this, and I'll take this first one because it's easy. $10 from LA Silver Surfers. See how easy that is? Boom, boom. Thank you.
2537 from JC. All hail Matt's shirt. I remember that shirt from so many episodes I binged of watching you. So it's really funny now to sit here completely as an atheist, not as I believe in the universe when I first started watching you.
I went into the closet because I don't like to wear t-shirts on the show. It started in part because we would have clip-on lavalier mics, and then it extended because when I'm doing magic shows or when I'm doing speaking events, I'm wearing a collared shirt and a jacket. And for magic shows, I don't like this shirt because it doesn't have a pocket. I want there to be a pocket right here in my shirts because it's very handy for magic show stuff. But,
sure.
I walked in the closet and saw this kind of at the back because I can't wear this shirt in public anymore. I'll show you something. I'm never throwing this shirt away because of the thing, but I can't wear the shirt in public anymore because it's ripped on the side.
Oh no.
It's got a rip big enough to fit a turkey through. And it also, this shirt is back when I weighed 270 pounds. And so it's like a freaking tent on me. I mean, you could almost fit a second me in here. But I love the shirt, and I love the story that goes with it. And I was like, I'll wear that one tonight.
That's cool. No, I love that. You guys have to see my shirt too.
There you go.
I like mine. I get a lot of looks wearing that around Tennessee.
I bet. $20 from Puffy Cloud. Hangover cure recipe: biscuits and gravy, eggs, hair of the dog, nap. I promise to catch the rest of the show after the nap. That's probably a good thing. There's actually a great place here in town called Biscuits and Groovy. They've got a couple food trucks around town with some really good, great biscuits and gravy with cheese and jalapenos and all kinds of stuff like that. It's good stuff.
That sounds amazing. $10 Australian from Tammy B. Thank you, Matt and Promise, for helping me with critical and listening skills. Aw, thank you for watching.
Speaking of your Don't Pray For Me shirt, for years on the other show, if somebody would say, I'll pray for you, I would glibly say, okay, I'll think for you. And
I remember that.
I still find it genuinely funny, but it is also, there's not parity there between the two. Because most of the time when somebody says, I'll pray for you, they're desperately flailing around for something to say that would be supportive and saying, I care about you, or saying something nice, but they've been basically indoctrinated by religion to utter this particular phrase. When you say, I'll think for you, it's a snarky little, you're not really thinking. So, but it's also recognizing that thoughts and prayers are fucking useless. And thinking isn't, and thinking and doing. But anyway, $9.99 from Lucky Liam. Thanks so much, Liam.
€10 from Charles McWilliam. I love these easy super chats.
I know.
I get a lot
There's
of
not
tongue
much.
twisters over on Chewed Gum. Oh, there you go. That one's yours.
We had a great trend going, and now Monkey at Typewriter had actually typed something.
No, I love
the thing is it Shakespeare? Is Monkey at Typewriter composed Shakespeare here? $10 for Monkey at Typewriter. Thank you so much. Consent is essential. Owning a person is bad. Now I'm a better role model. When I come before your family, I'm number one, or you're going to burn. But if that's how you view peace, it explains a lot of history. Exactly.
Yep. Well said.
There are probably, like, if Jesus actually existed, there are probably a number of sweet, kind things that Jesus did or said in a situation where I might not have been able to do the same. So I think there are scenarios, like, let's assume Jesus existed. I'm willing to acknowledge that there are situations where Jesus would have been a better person, a better humanist, just better overall in this situation, as long as Christians are willing to say that there are situations where I would have been better. And I think the difference is that I can demonstrate this in much the same way that when I did that debate at the Church of Christ in San Antonio, I explained to them that I could write a better book than the Bible, and I can prove it right now because I could rewrite the Bible word for word, reverse its position on slavery, and it would be a better book. Just unquestionable.
$10 from Bosco. Thank you for all you do. You guys change lives for the better. The world is a better place because of y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Bosco.
Very sweet. Thanks for the support.
$10 from Soupy Dude. As a Protestant atheist, I just can't get behind these Orthodox atheists. I know, right?
I don't know what that even means, but
and evidently we're Orthodox atheists. I don't know if we're Russian Orthodox atheists or
Right,
Eastern Orthodox atheists.
Who knows?
2x2s. €10 from Ectropog. It's like asking, what would convince you that the battler, I think that's supposed to be butler, what would convince you that the butler did the murder, even though you don't see a body, don't suspect the murder as a cause, and don't even know any butlers or battlers?
Either way.
I don't know any battlers.
$10 from Joshua Everett. The iron rule: treat others how they deserve to be treated. I don't know. I try to do different than that, because who am I to figure out who deserves what? But sometimes I'm not above giving the same energy back that somebody just gave me. So
exactly. I'm the first to admit that the facts of my life that have led me to here, in particular, the response to things that I do and say from both theists and atheists in a number of areas, have made it so that kindness is not always my starting spot if I detect that my interlocutor is about to be unkind. There's just trolls all over the time. There's a guy that's created, I don't know how many email accounts, because he's just absolutely, completely fucking obsessed with me and is really mad that you guys are here, listening to me and agreeing with me, when he thinks it's obvious that aliens are controlling all of us.
wow. Is that Dirk?
Yes.
Oh man, Forrest and I had a lovely talk with him where we started talking about beaver aliens. That's how far into that conversation we got.
I've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhouse in his head.
Amazing. $10 from Monkey at Typewriter. For Anna, you're doing great. Maybe you're agnostic, maybe you're religious. Just fight the urge to pull back to your safe zone because it feels uncomfortable. The truth fears no investigation.
Amen.
Agreed. Yep.
$10 from Dr. G Sharp's travel vlog. For the record, James Bond's DB5 was the coolest sports car ever. You may well be correct. And last night when we were playing, and the list of cars came up, James Bond's Aston Martin was my number one pick over the Batmobile.
Nice. Wow. $10 from Orange Last Laser. Joining the live late, but hoping to catch up at 2 times. Happy New Year. Thank you. Thanks for the support.
See, that's good. You can listen at double speed. I probably sound like this, and there's something going on. Things. I'm going to read this one in double speed so that when Orange Laser gets there, it'll be a quadruple speed. This might be difficult because my upper denture is loose at the moment. But $50 Australian from MD. Anna's honesty brought me to tears. I cried for a week when I no longer believed. I thought I was alone on the face of onslaught from my whole family, considered me for not going to church anymore. Thanks to you all at the line to your help. Damn. Almost.
That was pretty close.
Can't do it.
That was good.
Thank you so much, Adam. And I apologize for taking your very kind and very serious kind remarks to Anna and turning into joy. I had no idea that's what I was doing when I started the super chat, but I greatly appreciate the support.
Through you reading it.
Yeah. I start talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and all of a sudden I realize I'm talking about somebody, being brought to tears by a caller, and I'm like, fuck. Couldn't you just pre-read it first? Not only if I'd have read it first, I would have known not to do it with that super chat, but I also would have I'd have done better at double speed. So
20 pounds from Herbie Shine. It's nearly 1:30 a.m. in real UK time, and Anna's call has just finished. What a great call. I'm going to have to get to bed. We have a family get-together later. Great show today. Thank you both. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Herbie, and thank you so much for all the support you always show.
Yay, thank you. All right. $10 from Elizabeth Calvert. My apologies. Chat, stop shitting on Vlad's obvious ESL. He's at least 6 to 7 hours ahead of the show time-wise. And international calls don't always have the best line quality, maybe calling from a safe space. There was a lot of talk about Vlad's accent and everything else. It was obviously fake and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I hope that those of you who thought it was obviously fake will either retract it because that's irrelevant to the content, or retract it because it's probably not true, and you were just eagerly anticipating a prank call or a troll call, kind of like I was when I hung up on our final caller. So, if we screw up, we should acknowledge that we screwed up. And I also regret a little bit doing the I didn't convert thing with Vlad as my initial comment, because while that's technically true and it's a point worth clarifying, if I'd have realized I was speaking with someone whose grasp on some English subtlety wasn't going to be the same as mine, I never would have done that. And that's one of those things where I need to start pausing and, thinking, hey, you don't know this person or anything else. The problem is every time we do that, we get burned by another fucking troll fraud. It's the nature of the beast. So I guess, easier to get forgiveness than permission, and so I'll just apologize to folks for getting it wrong sometimes.
Doing our best over here. $9.99 from Air Force X. Shouldn't we call the Old Testament? How do you say that? I don't want to say it wrong.
Tanakh.
Tanakh. Wow, you really know how to say it. Or Hebrew Bible. Isn't it kind of disrespectful to rename another religion's book? I think we all say Old Testament out of habit, but it's been bothering me.
It doesn't bother me in the slightest because both is correct. So first of all, what Christians tend to call the Old Testament is not just the Tanakh. It's not just the Torah. It's the Torah and the Tanakh, or the complete Tanakh. But it's all fine. I tend to default to the Christian Old Testament claim. I think most Jews have come to grips and terms with the fact that Christians take the Jewish Bible, the Hebrew Bible, and mark that as the Old Testament. They obviously don't agree with it, but I don't know to what extent they think it's disrespectful. And honestly, I don't care. I'm not disrespecting people when I disrespect their book. I think most of them would be more upset that I referred to their book as a disgusting parade of ancient ignorance about a deity that is a comedy of errors of him constantly getting it wrong and fucking up reality for everybody else just because somebody can't love him. He is an awful character who punishes people unjustly, who is grossly erroneous when it comes to morals with regard to slavery and sex and gender and pretty much everything else you imagine. And bats aren't fucking birds, you dumbass author. However, calling it the Old Testament or whatever, probably not as big a deal as saying that. And I'm never going to not say that. Well, I guess I will. No, actually, if it turns out to all be true, that's still an accurate assessment there. It's just that it would also be true. Cool. But thanks. And I get your concern. I used to share it, but I got over it.
This one's yours. Sorry.
$10 from Hypa. Happy 2025. New Year to both of you. Here's something for you. What did the cow say to the spiritualist farmer? Woo.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. $20 from Godfrey in Good. Aloha. When theists say they know God exists because of personal experience, I ask if Hindus and Druids have personal experiences, does that mean their gods also exist? Is that question a good counter? Yeah, that's usually part of my line of questioning, is to say, well, then what about my personal experience with this? Or what about so-and-so's personal experience? Yeah, personal experience all around is just not a good place to start on these calls. I feel like we don't take many calls like that anyways, because they end so quickly.
And also, nobody's saying that your personal experience is irrelevant. What we're saying is everything that you know is coming from personal experience. Your brain processes sensory information, and it may or may not be reliable, which is why we have things like science where we look for independent verification. But even the details that you get from somebody else who repeated your experience is information that you're still getting through your senses. And so there's an internal validation. Actually, I recommend Susan Hawk's take on foundherentism, which is a combination of foundationalism and coherentism as a kind of an epistemological foundation. Still would love to talk to her about that someday, getting her on one of the shows. I got to quit talking about it and just reach out and see if she's interested. But personal experience shouldn't be dismissed, but you shouldn't assume that your interpretation and understanding of your personal experience accurately describes the external reality until you have additional evidence to support that. Because we know it's possible for someone to hallucinate and to see and hear things that aren't real. And we are working still. We don't fully understand the brain, but we're making distinctions about how we tell when something like that is likely to be happening. And we're good enough at it that for some people's own safety, we commit them to institutions. What's the likelihood that people we institutionalize for these conditions to protect themselves are actually, in fact, getting messages from gods or spirits or whatever? Well, we don't believe it. Doesn't mean it's not happening. And yet we can still evaluate whether or not it's consistent with the facts of the rest of reality and whether they have good reason to believe it's true. And in the absence of good reason to believe it's true, we must then discourage the assertions that it's true. Same as we did with, why is it bad to teach this stuff to kids? Because you can't show it's true. And even if it were true, I think it might still be bad to teach it to some kids, some age. Just like it's true that, PIV sex in people with, appropriate eggs and sperm can lead to sex, but we don't have to describe that to a 2-year-old. But you could.
$9.99 from Balthazar 22:8. Imagine devoting your life and decisions to Josh's advice. Yeshua ben Yosef isn't that influential.
Well, I wish I could say that he's not that influential, but even if he never existed, it's hard to deny the influence when there are billions of believers.
Yeah.
$10 from Bobtail Trekker. One of these days, I'm going to figure out why that name makes me laugh every single time. There's a song reference in there, and I'm not remembering it, but it's like I'm getting half of it every time you donate. But just remember, most are ignorant, few know, and even fewer teach what they know. And of the people who know, those that recognize they don't know enough and they don't know nearly as much as they thought are the ones who probably know more than the ones who think they know enough.
$9.99 from Balthazar 22.8. I'm also still waiting on an explanation of why Eden needed a tree of eternal life if man brought death into the world through original sin. What would have happened if man ate that fruit first?
Dun, dun, dun. We'd be living in sin forever. Wouldn't that be fucking awesome? $10 from Cheeseburger. The continued existence of recovering from religion really drives home that, yes, indoctrination is harmful. In fact, as does the Secular Therapy Project, and the fact that the Clergy Project exists because people have had their lives built around a religion and being a member of the clergy and don't have other options for employment, don't have other options for taking care of their family. They are stuck. There are pastors who I know personally who are atheists and are stuck in some church in some tiny little town. I've had conversations with them. They email and they're like, I'm adjusting my sermons. I'm making them, less biblical, brimstone and fire, and, hell and all this, and making them more humanistic by cherry picking verses. And you know what? They're doing the same thing. Sorry, love you guys, but you're not biblical. They're doing the same thing that the gay-friendly churches are doing. They are picking and choosing to focus their God glasses on the parts of their Bible that they find good and useful with a little spin, and away from the parts of their Bible that they wouldn't want us reading to their children. There, got a call back in.
$9.99 from Houston Promotion. Thank you. Oh, another one.
Another $9.99 from Houston Promotion. Thank you for everything, but I just wish there was a way to do translations to y'all's videos like Spanish or another language. Well, there is, and it's getting easier. For years, people have contacted me saying, hey, I'd like to translate, this YouTube video you put up into Portuguese, into Spanish, and I've discouraged it because, one, I don't speak those languages, so I can't verify that what they've translated accurately maps to what I've said. I trust that they're going to try. I mean, these are people who are actively working on secularism and stuff. But we used to have to type up scripts and add subtitles by hand. You don't have to do that anymore. AI can scrub through a video and produce a script that is shockingly accurate, though is probably going to have some of its inaccuracies. And because of that, you can tie that directly to something like Google Translate and get a pretty good translation into a number of different languages. And it's all getting faster, including the large language models, that you make it to the point where you could tune in to this program. And because we're already on about a 30-second delay, you may not even need subtitles. YouTube may just automatically dub a Spanish AI-produced translation of what I'm saying and what Promise is saying while we're saying it. Granted, you give it the 30-second space. It's not going to be long before miscommunications or the inability to communicate is going to be dramatically reduced. Like, for example, I live in Austin, Texas. A number of my neighbors only speak Spanish. I took 2 years of Spanish in high school, but that was, 75,000 years ago. And I don't remember enough to even have a decent conversation with them. I'm just too out of it. But I can pull up my device and have the G word translate whatever I say into Spanish. We did it on Halloween while we were standing out there with snakes. We pull up our phone, do some translation back and forth. You can have a pretty decent conversation that way, and it's only going to get better.
My husband speaks Finnish because he's from Finland. And a couple of times he's been sitting there having a conversation, and I don't know, maybe 3 words. It's an impossible language to learn. And I pulled up, I knew it was a conversation where this was fine to do because I was sitting there. I pulled up some like Google Translate or whatever, and it literally like listened to them talking and was just telling me what they were saying. So I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about. Okay, cool. Now I know. But I love those little language hacks. It's super cool.
I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but Kanata Opatella Pohuman Suomea.
What is this?
Oh, wait. I put it wrong in there. Pitaisi Opatella Puhuman Suomea, which I'm told by Google is you should learn to speak Finnish in Finnish.
That was good, but it has to have like all these sharp inflections and it's pauses.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime there's a double consonant, you have to pause. It's crazy. I'm going to start like language school or something because that's what's.
Yeah, no, I butchered it. And I'm waiting for your husband to come around.
I wouldn't even know.
He should walk up to me and be like, don't ever do that again. I don't know why I did a weird accent for that. But don't ever do that again. Like Mario. It's a me.
I don't know how to fake a Finnish accent. I have no, that language is its own world.
This one's you?
I think so. 1999 from Sarah Christine. Happy New Year's to my extended line fam. Things will probably only get worse from here on out. So it's really nice to have this community as my safe haven. I appreciate Matt and Promise so much for doing such important work. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
So sweet. I agree with you. I hope that we're all wrong about how much worse things can get, but no way to find out until it happens.
There's a very good chance. Granted, I'm not going to hold you to this, but there's a very good chance that you will see Promise on the Hang Up with me with much more regularity because we love doing the show together. And as long as she's like, don't get me wrong, there are other people that I want to do the show, but like if somebody said, hey, next week Matt needs to take the day off and not do the show, I'd be like, oh, just have Promise host and grab whoever she wants because
that's a huge compliment. Thank you. That's a massive compliment.
You're hot buttered awesome, like biscuits and groovy. 1999 from Balthazar 228. It drives me up the wall whenever I hear of people claiming success through 12 steps or other religious programs for addiction. This isn't a barely researched field, and psychotropic therapies are providing actual results. I have a number of problems with 12-step programs, but I will say this. If someone suffers from an addiction, actually, Balthazar's got a follow-up that I want to make sure I read before I answer. $10. Every 12-stepper who claims cured status always either has replaced one addiction with another, lives in perpetual fear of substance, is in denial, or all three. Yeah. So my take on 12-step programs is pretty simple. I don't think that they are sufficiently documented to show what their rates of recidivism are. A number of them we know lie about their recidivism rates. And essentially, for something like Alcoholics Anonymous, if you ever go back to drinking, you failed the program didn't fail you. I have concerns about replacing one addiction for another, whether that addiction is the group or your sponsor or the process or whatever else. However, as I've said countless times before, anyone who has a substance addiction or a substance abuse problem, if a 12-step program keeps you away from the substance and improves your life, keep doing it. If you find a better way, find a better way.
Right.
But if this is, even if it's Dumbo's magic feather, if you are the type of person that can only fly when you have Dumbo's magic feather, then by all means, I want you to fly. I just wish that people realized that they didn't need the magic feather. Unfortunately, until we come up with better ways and educate people about those better ways, some people are in a position where they may well need that magic feather. And I'd rather keep them safe and not doing harm to themselves or their loved ones or putting their life at risk or diminishing the value and quality of their life, struggling on a regular basis. And so while I will talk shit about 12-step programs with every time they come up, I also recognize that they're doing good for somebody, or somebody's convinced that they're doing good and that nothing else is going to work. And in that scenario, I'd rather keep that person sober.
Yeah. I also know of some friends that are, in recovery, and they are atheists, and they still appreciate it because they're able to kind of cherry pick what works for them from it. And they appreciate the gathering and being able to get together because it's, they can travel and there's always a chapter they can find there. So
yep.
I think lots of things can be true at once.
Yeah. But I share your concerns, Balthazar, and yet all I want is for people to get help when they need it. That means if you can't eat, you need help. If you can't get health care, you need help. Oh, Matt, you sound like a socialist. Okay, I don't care what label you put on it. I'd like for people not to suffer, and I'd like for privilege to be expunged after it has been used to eliminate itself whenever possible. And I would like for religious privilege to end immediately. You are free to have whatever religious beliefs you want. You are free to practice your religion right up to the point where it impacts other people. You don't need for your religion to have a special status with the government such that it's imposed on other people, such that it is preventing help that would help people get food, get health care, and live their life. While I love the fact that I've got a coffee mug that's available that is Look at the Trees, and Eve has a wonderful mug, which I don't know if there's a graphic that Arden can get up quickly with that one. By the way, Arden's mug, Leave Trans People TF Alone. All those mugs are available. You can go to, I think, are they all available at Line Merch, Arden?
Yeah.
I think they're still available. I know they're supposed to be going offline
Who was
shortly.
winning last night?
Oh, you destroyed. You cracked over 100. You were like 109, I think, when we closed out.
Promise is kicking ass.
There
Anyway,
it is.
there we go. There's Promise's mug. Disobey. Go ahead. In the meantime, huge thank you to our call screener, to our moderators, to Arden for producing the show, to Promise for agreeing to do it with me here on the show and do some more shows with us as well. There's our list of patron producers. You go to patreon.com/calltheline to lend your support in addition to liking and subscribing, joining, and doing all those other things here on YouTube. Tomorrow, Transatlantic Call-In Show, 2:00. I don't have any idea who's going to be on, so let's call it a surprise. See you next time. Bye-bye.